Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Offshore Live, number 12, with Charlie McCarthy and Billy Martin. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
So, we're right before we went live, you were telling me a story about the Argentina race of 1978, was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it was a rough race. They had really 30-foot seas. And we had run into problems in Argentina. I guess my big mouth got me in trouble. Anyway, when we went looking for the checkpoint, it wasn't there. We went to all these fishing boats. None of them had the flags. Finally, we came back, and there were the flags. One of the boats that we had already been to finally put the flags up. So we made the turn, came back in. I mean, now these are big seas. I've never seen water like this. At the start of the race, we almost lost the whole fleet. They ran us into a brick wall and made a turn right at the wall into 15-foot seas. So anyway, we came back in, and I forget who won. I think it was
Vincenzo. Not Ballesteri, but the guy with the
one of
Chiga
the
hotels.
Italian boats
Yeah.
came in ahead of us.
Alitalia was sponsoring it.
Right, yeah. They won the race by 20 seconds.
Yeah, with him coming 20 seconds behind.
The water was so big that we dove the boat through one of the 30-foot waves, tore off the deck hardware, and came out the other side still running. It was unbelievable.
And so the checkpoint boat didn't have the flags displayed?
No, I'm not supposed to have found the checkpoint. They had races down there where they said in English that the checkpoint would be here, but then in Spanish they told everybody it was over there.
Gotcha.
But also, let me just interrupt for a minute. Argentina and Chile were on war alert with each other, which meant there were no safety boats. No boats at all. One of the other boats, Bill Ellswick, ripped off an outdrive. His boat sank,
Oh, wow.
and they got into the raft and then waited there 4 or 5 hours, and finally a freighter or tanker or something going to Buenos Aires. Mar del Plata is 250 miles south of Buenos Aires. So they picked them up, and they radioed into race headquarters, "We're alive, but tell the crew just to bring the trailer back because there is no boat."
Wow.
So
I hear these stories and I think of what we go through today.
We were the last ones that seen them out there. Otherwise, they would never have known they were out there.
Right.
yeah,
I mean, you got to be 100 miles offshore, and they're picked up by a boat carrying ammunition or guns on
Right.
radio silence
In
Yeah.
30-footers.
in
Yeah.
30-foot seas.
You know what's crazy? Like the amount of things that we go through today to pull off a safety plan.
yeah,
And then I laugh. I'm like, do you know what they used to do? You know,
Exactly.
We got 2 square miles to cover. You have any
Yeah.
idea what it used to be
Yeah,
like?
these are 180-mile races.
Oh, it's insane.
I mean, there's no 45 miles down the
Right.
shoreline.
Right.
and back.
Right.
It's like out. And by the way, this is the Southern Ocean. If you miss a checkpoint, Antarctica.
Right.
You're welcome.
Right. Wow. So, how much time do you think you spent looking for that checkpoint?
More than 20 seconds.
I'd say, right?
Good half hour, 45 minutes.
So you'd have been a half hour in
And
front of
you're
that
out. This was
Italian
a
boat.
fishing boat that was out there fishing,
Right.
and all these big, they're probably 100-foot boats. They're all out there fishing, and we're trying to find a checkpoint that doesn't want to put its flags up for us, or put it up for everybody else.
That's great. That's not right.
And that's why since 1978, not only me, but a lot of other people, this is the 1978 world champion.
Wow, that's cool.
Yep.
Argentina or South America was just, I don't know if it was just me or if it was everybody, but it was just terrible. I mean, nobody speaks English.
Right.
They had a television show where they gave me something to read that was anti-American. I said, I'm not going to read this. They said, well, we don't care what you say. We're going to translate it as to this.
They'll make the subtitles say whatever they
I
want.
said, well, then I'm not going on. 3% of the population speaks English.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. How'd you guys get the boats down there? You ship them?
They put them on the deck of a boat.
I'm surprised you guys didn't just race there. What was it, another 100 miles from Florida or something?
It was a long way.
It was a long way.
I'm kidding.
It was a 12-hour flight from Miami to Buenos Aires.
Wow. Yeah, it's a trip,
And
huh?
then you had to go from there, get the boats out of impound.
Which you never got out.
Right.
They never came out. They were always in impound.
Right.
You paid them the first year was $100 bills.
Yep.
The second year was thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
I
don't-
still have an engine down there
Right.
that I couldn't get out of customs because if Argentina didn't have that item, you didn't get it.
Right.
Yeah.
You flew down on a 707 because they didn't have 747s.
Right.
So you're flying like this
Right.
all the way to Argentina.
Right.
Except Michael Doxford and his crew. They flew over on the Concorde from London to Buenos
Wow.
Aires.
On a Concorde. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's
Oh.
awesome.
Ellswick chartered a 707 or 727 and flew it down.
I was laughing. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I had Johnny Stanchion here, and he was laughing watching somebody on the TV saying he had a diamond mine. Like, I had a gas station. This guy had a diamond mine.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
I'm
right.
laughing. I'm like, man, it must have been so crazy back.
Yeah.
You know?
That was Ike Batista, I think.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
a diamond miner.
Yep.
You know, and I'm laughing. I didn't know that. You know, and
Yeah.
Stanchion's like, I have a gas station. You know?
Well, that one race, Betty sent her boat down, and the ship that it was on, the way they had it loaded, they couldn't unload her boat right away until they went upriver to unload some other stuff. And then the tide went out and the boat was stuck for another 24 hours. So I remember reading a letter from Gary Garbrecht to the APBA Offshore Commission. Like, we have to be careful about okaying these races in some of these places because they're
Yeah, it's
really not
lawless.
set up for it.
Yeah, when we ran, actually, it's up now. When we ran this race in Bimini, that was the major to do. Everything else was fairly easy. Customs was tough.
Yeah.
You know, and that was in 2017, not in 1978.
Yeah.
So things are much different, obviously. But even that was a hassle. I mean, we all run like a taped up lead shot for weight, you know,
Yeah.
and try explaining that to a customs agent because they X-ray the boats.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at like my green boat back then. I had to run 250 pounds to keep the nose
Level.
down. And they X-ray the boat and they call and they're like, we got to tear this thing apart. And I'm like, whoa, I can explain. I got all the lead out. And I'm like, look, it's just lead. You know, and it was like crazy what we had to go through.
Mhm.
You know, we're spoiled in the
Yeah,
States. We're
for sure.
spoiled. We don't realize what goes on.
We used to drive from Buenos Aires to, I think it was, anyways, about 30 miles down. And every morning we'd be pulled over by the policia. They take you out of the truck and they're poking you with machine guns,
Yeah.
saying T-shirt, T-shirt.
So it doesn't change. It
And
doesn't matter
can't-
where you are.
You can't say no comprende because then they think you speak Spanish. So now they really are going to get you. So you have to throw your hands up in the air and say, I don't know what you're talking about, and walk up, get in your truck and drive away while they're all pointing machine guns at you.
And to get in the dry or the wet pits at Mar del Plata, that was all Army with the guns.
Oh, yeah.
Standing around.
The hotel. You're staying in the Sheridan, and they got military with machine guns at each end of the hall and at the elevators. It's a real friendly place. I mean, they
That's
call
crazy.
ketchup spat. I mean,
I brought my wife with me on that race, and we stayed in Buenos Aires for a few days to get used to everything. And God has a way of humbling people. We were out on Florida Avenue, which is like the big Fifth Avenue of New York, Florida Avenue in Buenos Aires. Walking along, here's a Gucci shop. My wife said, oh, Gucci. I said, well, take a look. So she went in. She said, oh, look at this bag and look at the price. This is a bargain. So she bought the Gucci bag, right?
Because they made it around the
A
corner.
year later, we're in New York, walking down Fifth Avenue, and she said, I said, get in trouble with the zipper, go in here, they'll fix it. It's a Gucci store. So she went in, and the guy was excellent, very calm and very, oh, this is a beautiful bag, ma'am. Oh, but now, where did you buy this? She says, Argentina. He goes, oh, yes, they do great work, but we don't have a store in Argentina.
Oh, no.
But he said, it happens all the time, no problem,
We were buying copper and brass, copper milk jugs and everything. This guy was coming over to the hotel every morning with a truckload. And I'd buy it and I'd take it and put it with the truck in the pits. So when it's time to leave, he says, I take you to the airport. So I said, well, okay. So he comes to the airport. He says, well, where's all the copper? And he says, oh, well, we put it in the boat and we shipped it back. Ay. He gets in his truck and drives away. He thought he's going to get it all back because who's going to ship a ton of copper back to the States?
That's right.
That's awesome.
But you raced a lot in Panama, too.
Yeah, Panama is a different story. They're
Yeah.
nice people down
Now,
there.
in the
Friendly.
70s, were you running the red cigarette then?
No, he was running a 35,
35, and then the next year we ran the 39.
the black 39 first,
Yeah.
and then the orange one.
No, I never took the orange one. It was a 35.
No, the 39 orange for the Bacardi race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the States.
Yep. Oh, I mean, I understand. Yep. So you never took the other one down to Panama.
No, I mean, we
Yeah.
took them down there. We didn't know if we were getting them back.
Right.
Briggs Cunningham burned up all his race cars on the docks because they wouldn't give them to him.
Right.
We thought when we went down there, we'd find machine guns mounted on the decks of our boats because they were having the
They'd say
Falkland Wars.
policia.
Oh, it was just terrible. My wife had a good time though. My daughter had a good time.
Well-
I just did. They gave me a English speaking interpreter,
Right.
and she came with me all day long.
You know what's funny is, like, right there, I'm just wondering which boat you had with you. Today, guys that make a name in a sport usually do it in one boat. You know, like my old man's famous for either the Viper or the Fountain. There was not 10 of them. But I laugh. I look back at history and I look to, like, you guys where you were in a different boat every couple of months, it seemed like. It
Well,
was.
that year we ran Europe, South America, and States.
Right.
I was just changing suitcases in the airport. My wife would bring me a new suitcase, and off I go to
Right.
California.
That's great.
It was something else.
That first race that they came out with the bubble deck, the orange boat.
Right.
That was a Bacardi race. We had raced in California. Usually we go to St. Petersburg after that, but they didn't have it that year. So it was Bushmills and then Bacardi. So that ended up being a very rough race. And the production boats went out of the government cut over to Bimini and back. The open boats, we had to go down to Fowey Light, come back to government cut, go to Bimini, come back from Bimini, go up to Fort Lauderdale, back from Fort Lauderdale to the finish line. So, or maybe we have to go back to Fowey again, maybe. But anyway, race goes on. I had won the first race in Bushmills. So Jerry Jacoby came in second, Betty came in third. Now we go down to Bacardi in Miami, and I couldn't find my own helmet. So I borrowed somebody's helmet, but I also borrowed a balaclava that I put on. Well, going out the government cut, the balaclava is going like this, and coming low,
Right.
and pretty soon I'm driving this boat with the Braille method. I couldn't see anything. So, knowing Art Hafner, as we remember Art Hafner, I made sure that boat came off plane before I took that helmet off, or I would have been immediately disqualified.
Right.
You know, he was a great guy, but
Stickler.
those are the rules.
Yep.
So I took it off, redid it, put the helmet back on, get going again, headed down to Fowey, happened again. So this time I took the helmet off and threw the thing over and put it back on. And I think he used a strip of duct tape or something to hold the helmet too. So we get down to Fowey Light. It's rough. That's where Jack Studeville hurt his leg. And Joey let him off at a spectator boat, but he never brought the boat off plane. So Jack just kind of got out.
Yep.
Okay, Jack.
Jump.
That was normal.
Yeah, that was
That's
normal.
why I had to run with 3 people.
We got disqualified for that. We the first year we were racing the Viper, it was actually all white, and it had before the purple and yellow thing and all that. We were running in Point Pleasant when Kurt Berger was still running the OPA, and we went down to turn 1, and it was big. I was a kid back then, but the navigator in the boat was already a little nervous in the morning when he saw how rough it was, and it was only going to build through the day, you know. So they went out, and I'm watching, and this was literally their first year, so didn't know what trim tabs did and what, you know, we had a race boat and we were racing it. We didn't have any education, so that thing's just dropping on its tail and flopping all over the place. They get down to turn 1, the navigator hurt his back, so they pull inside the course, walk him up to the front of the boat. Now it's 8-footers, so try to get a guy to a safety boat in 8-footers. So my brother goes, "Sorry, man, but second place is coming." Kicked them off the deck and away they went, right? We came in and they won the race, and Kurt Berger walks up to my old man. He goes, "I hate to do this to you, but you're disqualified. You have to finish the race with the same amount of people you started with."
No, we had to finish with 2.
Right.
And just about every
You had an
race I had to
expendable.
put someone off. And it wasn't pull up to a boat and let them off. It was get close to it and you're in. But you talk about being disqualified. We got hit in Point Pleasant by, one of Wishnak's boys.
John Henry?
No, who was the referee? Bottomley, Tom Bottomley.
Oh, okay.
We came around the checkpoint. We had a brand new 35. We didn't know how to run the boat. Boat was fast. It was the fastest out there.
Now, at this time, you were already into the lightweight layups and all, right?
Well, they couldn't really make me a lightweight boat. It would break on me. He broke him in half.
Well, because back when...
He ran them tough.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
when you came back, and actually you're wearing a jacket there, when you came back and I had gotten the fortune to spend some time with you there, that was my favorite stories, was all of the demo boats that you would just go break in half and blow the deck off of.
We broke the 39. The black boat was only made for one race.
Right.
It was a 2-layer boat. It weighed 2,400 pounds.
Right, no bulkheads, no stringers.
With little half-inch bulkheads in it, missing a couple. And we broke that in half 5 times. I broke it in half going to Bimini, and I figured, well, we'll just pull in. Well, Arano's up there, you know, he's the boss. He's pointing. Okay, I guess we'll beat you at Bimini. I mean, now this boat is splitting and water's coming in, probably 50 gallons at a shot. So, I mean, he doesn't care what happens to me. My tail, not his. He's up there selling boats. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
He's practicing the speech.
I
up
get
there.
over to Bimini, and we're in the lead. And I'm looking to go, okay, beach it. Oh, no, back. Now we got to turn around. We got to come back. I mean, this boat's broken. It whipped across the deck and down to the bottom, down to the water line. The only thing holding it together are the stringers.
Right.
Well, we come back, and I think we ended up second in that race. But I'll never forget Arano just telling me, get going, get going.
So I didn't mean to cut you off. So you got hit in Point Pleasant by Tom.
Well, yeah, we rounded the checkpoint, and we're looking for smooth water. So we're going to find smooth water on a west wind down the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So my driver, I was throttling, tells me we're going to go around the back behind the spectator fleet. Okay, we're not going through it. We went around the back, right down the beach. We were running 92 miles an hour. Nobody was running 90. Down, turn, come back, down to Asbury Park, make the turn, and here comes Pinsky and Magoon. And what did we do? We shot him the bird. The 3 of us. We come in, no checker flag. Well, they already got to bottomly to get us disqualified for something. That we come in, we're half hour ahead of them all, and we get disqualified. I think that was the worst
For the
worst
one
one I
finger,
ever had. We got disqualified
for the
3 or
one
4
finger
times
salute?
that year.
Come on. That's normal in today's day and age. I have buddies of mine that do that to me.
We were the only ones that found Shrewsbury Rocks one year. Everybody else ended up in Long Island. We found Shrewsbury Rocks because we go fishing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Rounded it, came back. Everybody should have been disqualified. Oh, no. Not only did they win the race and take their places, but they gave out Rolex watches.
Mm.
Well, Wishnak got a gold one. I got a silver one. It
Something
was always
tells-
a battle.
Something tells me you weren't exactly a company guy.
No, I had a big mouth. I used to let it get known what I was
Well, that's
thinking.
why you're one of my favorites.
I mean, we had the scales of justice on the 35, and they were tilted this way. Politics, Billy Martin.
That is too cool.
25 years of boat racing, we
Yeah.
could sit here for a month and tell stories.
That's why I'm here, man.
Well, that get back to the McCarthy race. Now, second time I put the helmet on, everybody's gone. Everybody's long gone. So I go down, power, turn the light, come back, government cut. I can see stuff like that. But I've been at a party with Jim Wynn, maybe a year or two before that. And he's telling stories. And I remember the story he told about Miami Nassau when he had some problem with the Ghost Rider getting it going. And he said he was an engineer. So he approached things like an engineer. And he said, that morning I had checked the Gulf Stream and it was flowing stronger than normal. So he said, I took my boat and instead of going on the compass course with the correction that I had planned, I turned it further south by 3 degrees. Okay. So
Caught some of that speed.
he caught some of that drift up. So he said, when I hit the first checkpoint, I could see the other boats coming from the north where they had gone too far. So I said, well, the worst that can happen is I'll have a story to tell Jim Wynn that this didn't work for me. But I tried it and it worked.
Yeah.
So I went from the back of the fleet
Well,
to
you were
like,
probably better off coming inside a little bit and making that trek with it versus
Yeah.
trying to be safe and then have to come against it.
Yep.
Right?
and by the time almost to the cement ship, or the checkpoint, you had already turned. You had gone back. Betty had gone back. And so I turned, and I think there was another boat ahead of me. But anyway, Ippolito. So I turned, came back in. Now we get back to Government Cut. We have to go up to Fort Lauderdale now. Well, going to Fort Lauderdale, I get pounded and I get squeezed between the bolster and the steering wheel and get knocked out for a couple of seconds. But naturally, I had a really good throttle man. And he kept the boat going just like I was still steering. So
Well, if you were wedged in there,
I was
it
wedged
going
in there,
straight.
knocked out. He could, let's go. So we got the Government Cut. I'm at the big red and white pipes there at Fort Lauderdale Inlet. The year before, I had broken down there. So I went in on the beach, and the water's much, much calmer, and I remembered that. So this time, my navigator's going crazy because he wants me to do a 180 and keep going, but it was too rough out there. So I could see Ippolito ahead of me out there, and I went in on the beach, and I ran inside some of the swimmers at the hotels. But I made up a lot of time.
Right.
And then I came out and started heading after Betty and Billy. And Betty finished first. You finished second. And I finished third.
We were 20 minutes ahead of Betty coming back from Bimini, and it was so rough. I beat myself so bad that I didn't know what I was doing. I swore we had a belly full of water. I made him open the hatches and looked in. Of course, there was no water. I couldn't trim it. The boat just kept jumping, and we kept seeing Betty gaining and gaining and gaining. And she's there going, we're going to get him. We're going to get him. I couldn't run the boat.
It was the first time you run it too. First time you raced it.
Yeah, but the boat was a heavy boat. We were
Yeah.
last coming out of government cut, and at the 1 mile buoy, we were almost in. I think we were running second, and it was a good rough water boat,
Yeah.
but just didn't have the speed. Aaron O was right when he built that boat. He said the rounded deck isn't going to work, and it didn't. It was a rounded deck, and the boat ran like this.
Too much weight up top.
It just it time walked. I mean, once we got the right engines in it, the boat finally, I think, got up to 90 miles an hour. We only got to 85.
Right.
But it would go through a mountain at 85. I mean, you
Right.
didn't have to back off.
Right. It's interesting. I talk to people sometimes, and they ask like about the design of the boats. Like if you go back, not necessarily all the way to the 70s and 80s, but even like the late 80s, 90s with the cats with the big wings in the back and all that stuff. People are like, what was all that about? I said, you have to understand, that was a brand new concept. Racing up until the 70s was not high tech equipment,
Mm.
And then if you look from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, so we're talking 20 years, 22 years, it completely revolutionized. There was nothing that looked the same from the decade prior. I said they were trying everything they could to get the boats to run,
Yeah.
and it's interesting when you look back and you see like the different styles of the hulls were pretty true. I mean, the hull was a fairly simple concept back then, just get it to run right, run straight through the rough, and and then from there, all the manufacturers had their own tweaks and everything, but the decks, you watch like the trying different aero designs and different. It's so cool. Like today, you don't see too much of that. Like everything's fairly cookie cutter today. You look back, and that's the most interesting thing to me is that you could run a cigarette in 1979 and run a cigarette in 1980 and not be able to tell that they're the same boat company.
Right.
Yeah, if you started in '63, the race boat was a flat bottom boat.
Right.
It wasn't a V. Arano came out with the bright idea that a V will slice the water and go faster.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, everything's coming out as V bottoms, but the V bottom wasn't a true V. It was a V and then a round.
Right.
Yeah.
And then eventually they made a straight V, and then they made steps in it, and we pick up 3 miles an hour by sharpening the strakes instead of having a strake rounded.
Yep.
We'd sharpen that strake and take the hook out of the bottom of it.
Right.
There was more miles gained in the hull than there was in the engine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, hull technology has come a long way, but I always attribute it to that research. I mean, the stuff that you guys did, where you weren't just running in, like when we go to a race course now, it's either flat or it's rough. There's no like preparing for the elements, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm going to be in the flats over here, but then it's going to be rough over there, where you had to build a hull that could do everything.
It's a wing and a prayer. You can tell the story best. Billy had a 30-foot Magnum made for a race boat. The only problem was there was no deck for it, right? You had to get it from Thunderbird.
Right. Yeah.
So
they
they
got it
bought
from Thunderbird, and
they brought that, put that, and that's the boat you used to win the
America's
famous
Cup.
America's Cup without the apostrophe.
Yeah. When we first started racing, my first gas tank was a 130-gallon hot water tank. And it was bolted in. Our first race was the Bahamas 500. And this boat ran boom, 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 boom. We had raced around Long Island in a Switzer craft with a pair of 110 Mercs on it and two 55-gallon drums strapped down with strapping wire.
A Switzer wing?
No, it was just V-bottom.
V-bottom,
Yeah,
okay.
one of those, I think it was maybe an 18-footer.
Yeah,
16
I know
footer.
the one you mean. Yep.
And we broke down, and I pulled in, needed a coil. I got a coil. They called the race off. And this is how I got into it. Donzie Blue Devil passed me. They were coming back. They called the race off at the end of Long Island, and I seen this boat coming. Vroom, vroom, vroom. I mean, I'm running dragsters, and I'm playing with boats at the same time. And here comes this monster boat. I think it might have been a 30-footer. And I call up the speed. I call up Rogers and I said, Roger, we're going ocean racing. I mean, you work all week to go 9 seconds, and here you can go out here for hours and run.
Right.
I went to Lures. Somebody told me there was a race boat at Lures. So I get down to Lures, and here's this big black monster, 25 foot. I mean, it can fit on the deck of my 40-footers.
Yeah, right.
Oh, this is it. Buy that boat, and we put an engine in it. Of course, it's a race motor.
Yeah.
And we go out there, we run it, goes, round, 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 round. Seizes up.
Yeah.
Well, we got tight clearances, you know.
Right.
I'm an engine man.
Yeah.
So finally, we start learning that you got to open up the clearances.
Right.
And when we learn about wiring, we learn about fuel systems.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be checked out between every race. Every single nut and bolt and wire and hose in that boat has to be gone over, or you're not going to finish.
Right.
And when you go back into the 60s, we were building all the equipment for the people that were buying boats. Nobody knew how to rig these boats.
Right.
We had Jack Studeville. I had a guy from Lake Apacon that moved to Florida. He built me a couple of boats. Bobby Davis, Lake X built a couple of boats, but we kept learning and learning and learning how to wire boats. And I mean, even the wiring, you don't use the solder has to be lead-free. Lead-free or something, otherwise it would corrode.
Right.
With the
I
salt.
mean, just
Right.
a simple thing. I mean, you're out there racing, all of a sudden your gauges go crazy
Right.
because your wiring has corroded.
Right.
And your fuel lines break or pinch because you haven't got it strung right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was a learning experience that the public benefited from in offshore.
Yeah, that's real. The safety of the boating today was really the foundation comes from the racing.
Pioneer.
We
that,
put in-
absolutely.
We put in CO2 systems so that we wouldn't blow up. I mean, I burned up. I spun them out. I dove them in. I put them up over beyond the point of no return. I think I'd done everything I could with a boat and really didn't get too hurt.
Right.
The race that he won that Red Christ put on, Red was trying to promote. He was a great promoter about get a lot more boats, get a lot of this going on. So he decided that he would call it was going to be held in Nassau in the Bahamas. And he decided he would call it the America's Cup Offshore Powerboat Race. Well, the only problem is he left the apostrophe out. And because of that, he thought the America's Cup Sailboat Group was going to sue him, bring him to court, it'd be all over the New York Times. He'd have tons of publicity. They ignored him. So, but the racers showed up to race. They don't care what we're racing.
Right.
Well, what it's called, let's race.
Right.
And Billy won that race.
We took, it was 3 races. We took 2 seconds, and then we won. And the last day, it was rough, and this Magnum was a poor excuse for a race boat. I mean, it was a bow rider, and I decided that I'm going to run as hard as I can. I'm going to pass Ballesteri, and we're all going to wave to him like we're having a great time. Well, we just destroyed Ballesteri, and he chopped
Slowed
the
it.
throttles, and they just followed us the rest of the race, and we won.
It's all psychological.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, and I was going to bring that up, is it must have been really cool. Today, like, I can only speak to what I do today, right? And a lot of what I did as coming up as a young man in the green boat was I would demoralize. We'd go out on the parade lap where everybody's supposed to just kind of get their bearings, figure out the race course, because it's very tight racing today. So guys got to really, whereas you guys were navigational, they need landmarks to not miss those turn buoys, because if you change a degree, whereas for you guys that translated into a much greater distance,
For these guys, now if they veer off the course, there's 13 other boats that are following the course. So, if like the whole coming back and it gets kind of crazy. So the parade lap's supposed to be a 35, 45 mile an hour, just get your bearings right.
Yep.
I would go out and I'd wait and let them go 15, 20 boat lengths ahead, and I'd get the green boat running good. And that thing was tiny. I mean, even when I ran in Class 6, 26-foot boats compared to that, which I'd love to have a conversation with Alex, but they call it a 24. I've measured it. It's 22. Yeah. And I'd get a running start at them, and I had a Class 1 motor in it. It was a 510 with the Oldsmobile heads on it, and it was 13-to-1 big compression motor. I'd get it all the way wound up and get coming from 20 lengths away and hit one and come down in the middle of the pack and look at everybody like, yeah, you know what I mean? Come on. And these guys are like, it's rough out here, and here's the what's up guys just having fun,
Yeah.
And I would come in from the race, and they'd be like, you're out of your mind. And that's what did it. They wouldn't, even if they had a shot. A lot of those guys are phenomenal racers, but they wouldn't come. They would watch the green flag go up, and that thing would get its attitude and get running, and they'd go, let them break. We're not going after them. And, that's when we could kind of start to play your game, where you set the pace and then reel it in, right?
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. I missed that.
The designs would take like a significant leap. And you weren't really sure what it did. I was just talking to Sammy James the other day. We were talking about the 1965 Miami to Nassau race that he won with 007. Is that you?
It was. Let it ring. Oh.
Don't worry about it.
It's all right.
It's no big deal.
It's okay. And he was working for Thunderbird at that time, which had purchased Formula, and that was part of Merrick Lewis's group. And he had raced over to Miami-Nassau on the Thunderbird. And then he got tied up with something, and he went back, and he thought, he was going to take the boat back. The boat was already gone. So he's walking around, he bumps into Bobby Moore. And Bobby says, well, you looking for a ride back? He said, yeah. He said, come on, Naki and I are going to take the Donzi, 28 Donzi back. And he said, I got on that boat, and it was like, I had just come the other way on the Thunderbird. And he said, the next day I went back on that boat. That's a race boat. He said, that's how much difference that was, that, just from a year or two.
Right.
And
well, that's like we had the lures. And I went to Magnum, and there's Arano and Naki putting that 27 together, the little ski boat.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's what it looked like, was a little ski boat compared to all these high-sided boats.
Right.
And I told Don, I said, one day I'm going to buy that boat. And, yeah, Sonny, come back when you got the money. So that next race, I set my boat on fire in Key West. The cast iron fuel tank, the 130-gallon fuel tank, broke loose, and the fuel line got caught between the mount and the side of the boat, and it cut it and set the boat on fire. And here we are with probably 100 gallons of fuel in it. So we put the fire out. And, well, anyway, that's another story. But we did get that 27 Magnum, and it broke all kinds of records. Always finished in the top 5 overall against the twin engine boats with it. But going from that Magnum that lures that went boom, 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 to this Magnum that went across the tops of the water, it was like night and day. I mean, you just couldn't believe the difference between it.
Well, I can tell you this, today, Magnums come out on the course, and they run just as well as anything that's built today.
That's the same boat. It's the same hull. It hasn't changed.
No.
They didn't put steps in it. They didn't put different strakes in it.
And I did see they actually built one, a 2021 edition. I don't know if you've seen. There's a group in Florida that completely restored one, and it's gorgeous.
That's Katrin's son.
Okay.
Who's,
the silver one, right?
Is she still involved?
She is, but she isn't.
That boat is, I don't know.
She's aging out like,
I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know the boat itself is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Like, I think I would buy that today over anything that's built
let's
today.
see. Now, the early 27s went for $9,500.
Oh, man.
Now, what do you figure that 27 goes for?
Billy, I can buy headers and tailpipes for $9,500 today.
But 9,500 for a twin-engine 27 Magnum, because we brought the first ones up here, and Bert was selling them in that marina across from where Murphy's used to be.
Models?
Anyway, we brought the first 27s up here, and he sold 3 the first year, and then 6 or more the second year, and that started the B-bottoms in Barnegat Bay.
Up here.
Wow. Great.
And that came from racing.
Right. I can't get my head wrapped around that. $9,500 for a turnkey boat.
So I think that boat went for about $250.
Right.
That 27 Magnum that they built, because they were calling me on it. They wanted all kinds of information. I mean, I just never made it down there, but I forget the guy that is from out in Ohio or somewhere that was involved with her building that boat.
Okay.
Because they were, is it a 27 or is it a 30, a 31?
No,
I think that silver one's a 27.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a single engine 27.
Yeah, he has one of the 30s that were built, the 31s.
You don't see too many of those.
No, there were only like 7 or 8 of those ever built, and we tracked them all down. And he has one of them.
I think he has Boarhog.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Boarhog. That was
the
guy from
Bahamian.
Nassau.
Yeah, Bahamian guy. Juan Fernandez.
Juan Fernandez,
Yeah.
right.
Stirring up these old memories.
Well, that's why I'm so happy to have the two of you here.
When you're talking about the 27 Magnum, now you have to look. Don became world champion using that 27 Magnum.
Yes.
Harry Scholl was the designer. Don would give him the ideas, knock it out in his yellow pad, take his feet off the desk, and say, "Here, design it." And that's
Right.
That's
No
what
worries.
they did. But in he had boats set up with 3 upward engines, and he had other boats set up with a single engine. And what he did is he had 3 boats that year.
Mhm.
One was in Europe, and Naki and Michael Aronow dragged it all around all the different countries. One was on the West Coast, one was on the East Coast. And Steve Saroy was the one that Don got to drag the boat out to the West Coast for him when he was racing that year. You look at the side of the boat, as Billy said, they're big sides. You look at the Magnums that he's selling, he cut about this much off. Then you look, he sold Magnum, now he moves to cigarette boat, and he has this hull, Magnum hull. But he says, this is a good selling size, so I'm going to make it a 28 rather than 27. Well, how are you going to make it longer? Well, if you've been in some homes, you notice there's a piece of molding that fits between the wall and the ceiling. So they added that to the top of this bare hull on the Magnum, and that's how they raised up the side on the cigarette. So I think you have a cigarette out here, center console.
Yes.
Take a look at the front, and you'll see where that crown molding.
Right.
And they used to have to slip it out of the mold up this way once they released it.
Right. So did that become the Squadron?
Yeah, that became the Squadron
Wow,
also.
I never knew that's where that came from. I thought that was a totally new design.
No, it's the same,
Wow.
same thing.
Where do you think the Hustler came from?
The Hustler.
Hustler Boat Company, when they came out with that Hustler. That was
had to be a
my
35,
America's boat mold that they took the 27 and stretched it.
That was to the 33? Is that one?
Yeah.
Right.
And that thing sat out in the boonies. It was full of water for years. And they went down there and they bought it. And because the name of the boat was Hustler, they became Hustler Boat Works. And
right. Wow.
That 27 Magnum is actually Hustler.
And it's also a signature.
Yeah.
When Tommy Adams took Miss America, right, took his bottom from his own 27 Magnum, and then he made it with a different deck on it called Signature.
Well, Aronow had
And that
a little backyard deal going where he would always keep making molds, and then he'd sell these molds to different boat companies.
That's how he got me going.
Right.
I bought the molds from him.
Now, you mentioned the Signature. Just totally kind of off the wall question: does the name Rich Farrell ring a bell to anybody?
I know the name. I don't.
I
can't
ran
place it
into
yet.
a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, moved down to Florida, and I hadn't seen him in years. And we were down in Florida racing, so I went over to see him, and he lived with his grandfather. I walked in, he introduced himself as Rich Farrell, and you know when somebody introduces themselves, they can introduce themselves where this guy introduced himself to me like with a purpose, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, where do I know this guy? You
Yeah.
know? And he goes, come upstairs, I want to show you something. Now I don't know this guy from Adam. I walk in his office, and it's nothing but 27 Magnums, Michelob Light, Miss America. He's got a picture out in California with the trophy with the boat hanging on the crane over the table and all. And I'm like, well, this guy to be doing this stuff must have been in the real deal. I
Yeah.
mean, you know. And so then he's showing me flipping through his pictures, and he goes to a 38 signature called Miss America, I believe was the name on the side of it. It could have been Michelob, but I'm drawing a blank. That had to be one of the prettiest boats I've ever seen. I mean, he had a picture of it, just kind of bent out of shape a little bit flying, and I'm like, wow, what a gorgeous boat. And that's a name that had never hit me. Like, I never understood where Signature came from or how that came into the fold.
Yeah.
It was a totally new discovery for me a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was a block down on the left-hand side from Cigarette.
Okay.
They were all lined up there.
But Cigarette had the main building, the lay up in Don's office, then the building 2, and then building 3, and he was on the other side of that.
On the other side.
And he had a big poster. I remember that. If you walk in the yard, you look at it. There was a big poster and it said, "If you like Cigarette, you'll love Signature."
Really?
Yeah, come on over, type of thing.
Wow.
But Michelob, because I know Bernie did. I think it was also called Strawberry Patch.
Yeah, I remember that. The
Yeah.
girls ran that one.
Yeah. But I think Bernie did that's how Bernie first got in with the Offshore rather than just all the Unlimited. Speaking of Bernie, I won the Bushmills race, tied up the boat, walking up the ramp, and Bernie Little sitting at the top of the ramp. Said, "Great race today." He's in the helicopter. "I watched it, the boat really runs good and all that." He said, "Listen, Preston Henn told me he's going to retire. That means the Natural Light sponsorship is available. From what I saw today, I'd like you to become the Natural Light." I said, thought for about 30 seconds, and Bernie, I worked too hard. It took me 2 years to get this boat finished and here and all that, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm gonna turn you down. Thank you anyway. So then later, Sammy, who was with Gentry, and Bernie was sponsoring them, Sammy would say, call me up every now and then, say, "Oh, damn it. I got that Bernie Little sponsorship. It's supposed to get the check on the 3rd, and it's coming the 1st. I'm all set up to accept this money on the 3rd, and he's mailing the check early." He said, "Oh, that's right. You never took a sponsorship, so you don't have these problems."
So I was way off base. It was called the Jazzleberry Patch?
No, Jazzberry.
Jazzberry Patch.
Right.
That was that. So I just happened to, a buddy of mine I went to high school with,
Yeah.
and then he knew I was in Florida for a boat race. So I was stopping by to see my buddy, and he's like, "You got to get him upstairs. I want to show him all my stuff, you know." And I just thought that was too cool. He passed away last year, Rich, and just super nice guy. Had such awesome.
I don't remember that boat.
He said he ran for 3 or 4 years. He did all the California runs. He raced against Arnow a couple times. So I was assuming maybe you guys would have known him. But
He might have
anyway,
been a crew guy and some, navigator, something like that. And
possibly. I really don't know. I only got to talk to him those few couple times. But that was where I discovered Signature, and I was like, wow. I just, for whatever reason, never heard of them.
You asked me earlier about Coyote and Banana.
Well, and that's what I wanted to get to. So kind of, where did Banana Boat Company start?
My main business was transportation. I owned a bunch of trucking companies. But I always wanted to get into offshore. Not always, but I had grown up. This is a very important thing, so everyone pay attention. I was at the America's Cup race in Newport in 1958 in a 14-foot flat-bottom work skiff. And I saw that boat designed by Raymond Hunt, the first deep V, that Richard Bertram, who was on one of the America's Cup boats, saw too, and he instantly understood. That design is unbelievable. I was simply saying, that boat's really fast in rough water. And that became Bertram, and I went off to have another summer with my flat bottom skiff. But I started racing that year in OPC. I had a 14-foot, like a yellow jacket. And out of Newport, around all of Narragansett Bay, up into Fall River and places like that, 84 miles. So my class, which was limited, APBA limited to 40, I had a 35 horse. I came in second. Came back the next year with a 40 horse. I'm not fooling around here. And I won.
Right.
So I thought to myself, this might be easier than becoming a professional baseball player since I have no talent there. So I started racing and moving up, and I got into a racing craft with a 110 horse outboard. I was racing OPC races. My wife and I used to drive down to, I guess it was Freeport, or something in Long Island.
Yeah, Freeport. Yep.
And they had races there, and we'd sleep in the car overnight and then go back the following morning. And then I got into SK boats, and I liked it, but I didn't have the kind of money that I needed, So when I went away to school in 1963, I graduated in 62 from high school. I took a year off and hitchhiked around the country and did a lot of crazy stuff. But I went to college in 1963 in Florida on the West Coast. And my roommate happened to be from Chicago, who had an 18-foot Switzer craft, and his family was very into offshore powerboat racing. So through that connection, I would go down with him to Miami. And his dad's best friend in Miami was Mike Gordon with the restaurant.
Restaurant, yeah.
So we became part of Mike Gordon's pit crew. And when he had that purple fish peddler.
Yeah.
So Mike bought the first 27-foot formula from Don. He needed some pots. He'd sent, we were the gophers, go for coffee, go for beer, go for pots type of thing. Don't touch the engine, and you can wipe the boat down, but don't do any more than that. So that's how I first met Don, back in 1963. And people say, "Well, what was he like?" I said, he was Don. That's all he was. He wasn't a legend. He was, So I saw the cigarette, the Formula 233, sitting that day, and this was right before the Key West, Miami Key West race, the end of the year 1963, and that was talking about having the number of people on the boat. Mike Gordon had two other guys driving the boat, and Mike got knocked out during the race on the way down there. So they pulled into a checkpoint, I think in Marathon or Isla Morada, threw him out in the dock, then get going again, then remembered, oh no, we need the same number of guys, and they went back, and they had to get him and put him back on the boat. They brought him to Key West. So I started with that, and I became more and more, but I was on the West Coast, so I couldn't get over there all the time. And that's how I met Michael and, the rest of the family kind of thing, And then I kept telling, same as you said, I kept telling Don, I'm coming back to buy a race boat. So when I had my businesses going strongly enough, I felt I can afford a race boat now. I went back 75 and I said, I want to buy, that's when you had set a record, or I want to buy a boat like that, like Benihana or 35 Cigarette. The 36s I thought they were too big, and the new ones were faster and all that. So he said, once again with his feet up on the desk, saying, well, I've thought it over, and I'm not going to sell you a race boat. So my heart broke. What do you?
His favorite sentence was, "You probably can't afford it." And then he would turn and take 5 steps, and of course, I'll take it.
No, but his next line was almost as good. He said, I said, what are you talking about? I've been dying to become an offshore racer, on and on and on. He said, what I am going to do is I'm going to put you in the boating business. So I'm thinking, oh, now he's going to try to sell cigarette to me, where he sold Formula, he sold Donzi, he sold Magnum, and now I'm the next. I said, listen, I might be able to afford to go offshore racing maybe a few times a year, but I certainly can't buy the boating business. And he said, no. And he was telling me, whenever he made a new mold, he'd make 3 or 4 of them and he'd store them around Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, in case there was ever a fire. That way he wouldn't lose them.
Smart guy.
He said, I'm going to sell you the 24 mold, the 27 mold. He said, I want you to go back, and he told me how to do it, and help me with the name. You know, he used to build remember those yellow things, the real skinny things that you used to call them Don's banana boats? They were only like 7 feet wide, 6.5 feet wide.
No, I don't remember that.
Anyway, he said, use a name, don't use a name that's marine connected. Use a name that's anything different, like Formula, Donzi, that type of thing. And
he did have a gift for coining the names.
Remember these things? And they would shine walk like crazy. He finally got rid of them. He only raced it once or twice, and he says it's too much. Only 6.5 feet wide, and he finally sold them to John Meekum down in Texas, the oil guy, and he won. I think he won the Houston Channel Derby or something, a couple of times. So he said, okay, and when you hire a crew. So what he said, run it as a virtual company. And what he meant by that is, and don't ever forget, this is your business. This is what your wife and your family and your income, that's where it comes from. Don't lose it because you're going to play with racing. So he said, a virtual company is, you don't want to open up a glass business and hire people who lay up the glass and all that. So he said, you come from Rhode Island, which is a great, Bristol, Rhode Island is well known as a glass, they had Pearson boats there. They had all kinds of, history, strong history. So I went back and I found a glass shop who would take the molds and build the boats. Like, okay, you call me up. I want a white one with a white bottom and red boot stripe and red and white interior. All he had to do was the glass work. Then I brought it back. I had my own 10,000 square foot garage in my business. I wasn't really using, so I put it in there and I hired 2 guys. Go up to Mercury, pick up a Mercury's 280 package, TRS package. They would install the engine. I get somebody else to make me a fuel tank. So everything was subcontracted out.
What's up on you? Okay.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but I'm losing you a little bit. If you could just pull the mic up, there you go.
Sorry.
There you
No
go.
problem.
So by never really having, if I didn't sell a boat that Friday, I didn't have to cover any payroll.
Right.
It was just kind of,
Right.
and I could use those mechanics on my trucks.
Right.
If I didn't have something. So it was kind of a good thing.
Right.
So he said, do that. So I brought a boat back down to him, and the deck that I had to make, we were going to use as a plug, but he said, that's too heavy. So he ripped it off and he made another deck. And he said, I want you to start with I know you've been racing, I know you all that, but you haven't been racing big boats. So I want you to start with a 24-foot boat. So he rigged the boat. Stan Irwin with custom engine. He said, I'm going to have Stan make you 2 engines. I want you to do in the modified class, not the production. Production is everything has to be perfectly stock and all that. Modified, he said, there are 10 different judges, and they'll each have a different idea of what modified means. But Stan will build you some good engines, which he did. And he said, then you can start. And he said, you can win races. So I did. I went out and I won a very rough Key West race where I was up against the 27 Magnums, 28 cigarettes and stuff like that. But we did well. So a couple of years goes by, and I decided I went down to see Betty at the World Championships in '77. So my oldest son and I rented a plane, seaplane. Even I don't know if we ever landed in that day, the water was so rough. But we flew over the race and watched it and all that. So when I finished, I ran into Don, And I said, I think I want to move up to open class. Now, he said, don't forget, the reason I'm doing this, the most important thing, the reason I'm doing this is all the money that you spend racing is not racing. You're doing research and development for your banana boat company. So he said, that way it's all a write-off.
Right.
I said, okay. So he said, well, be careful now, because if you're going to get to a bigger size, I'm not going to sell you the 39 mold or, the
Right.
bigger molds.
Right. Direct
So
competition.
you have to go with somebody else. So I went to Jean-Claude Simon, who was in the sport, but not in the sport. It was boat builder, but not boat builder. But anyway,
He was French, right? It's,
French,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Yep.
So Jean-Claude had found, going back a couple of years now, the Benihana, the very first Benihana, was won by a boat that was called MSV. It stood for Miller Sesente Varis. John Varis was the owner. Bobby Sesente and Sonny Miller worked at Cigarette for Don, but they put this plug together, made a mold 44 foot long. Unfortunately, it was too big for the engines of the time. But they did manage to win that 1974 Benihana, and they almost got disqualified because I guess a lot of the other boats lost their way, whether it would be fog or missing checkpoints, but they happened to manage all of them. And they came in, they thought everybody was already celebrating, handing out trophies. And they said, all of a sudden, helicopters came from all over. And Bobby said, I looked up, and there's a guy leaning out the door in the helicopter. And he said, I guess he was trying to tell us we were number one. Well, he said, I thought he was giving me the finger. So I started giving him the finger right back. Until we got, and they waved the checkered flag. I guess they were the only official finisher, but they won.
Right.
So that boat had an extra strake on the bottom, and it was 44 feet long.
Right.
When Joel Halpern decided to move up from the sports class that he was racing in, he somehow got connected with Jean-Claude. And so Jean-Claude kind of came with him. And he made a deal that he would buy a boat if they blocked the mold down from 44 to 38 feet. And those became the beep beeps.
Okay.
All those white beep beep boats.
Right.
Okay. So I said, I ran to Jean-Claude down in Key West too. And I said, listen, I'm interested in getting, can you get one of those boats that Halpern's running? Oh, he said, I'm designing a whole new boat. So I said, well, tell me about it. So he started telling me about it and all that. And I said, I'm interested. How long will it take? Oh, I'm very far into this. And so I talked to Don again, and he said, the main thing you should do with new design, make sure the strakes are wider. So on the chines, 5 inches, the next chines in 4 inches, the bottom chines 3 inches. And he said, you don't need the extra strake that MSV has. That's enough. And that will give you almost 1 foot of planing surface in the back.
Right.
I said, okay. So I talked to Jean-Claude about that, and I said, yes, that. Then he had this corrugated aluminum deck or whatever. Come to find out, some guy in Italy, Paolo Cagliari, that's his design. But Jean-Claude kind of took it with him when he crossed the Atlantic. And they're putting it on everything. And I said, I don't want that. And Don said, the wind against that is going to keep the boat in the water. It's almost like a spoiler on a car. So he said, cut it down and come up with a windshield that looks like your banana boat. Then it's something that, okay, that's just a bigger banana boat.
Right.
And he said, when you make it, see if he'll make it even, perfectly even, the last 4 feet, so you can block it, and then you can make a 34-foot boat out of the same mold. So later on, you'll see less photos and stuff like that of Miami Heat. There are a lot of things like that. But anyway, the original deal was he was going to start this new business. I was going to fund it to a certain point. I paid him for the 38-foot race boat, and I paid him for a 34-foot boat because I was going to do some production class racing too. I had another customer, Chuck, who bought a boat for me, 34 foot. So I put a little cash into it. Well, that was in the fall of 77, and the first boat I had delivered was my 38-foot race boat in late summer of 78. So I had missed so much of the racing season. So anyway, but I had done a lot of production racing in other boats. Some of my customers had moved up and they asked me to drive and stuff like that. So then I win the first race. And I didn't lead the whole race from beginning to end because Billy Ellsworth got ahead of me for about 30 seconds. But after that, we were gone.
Right.
And I didn't go to Mercury for engines because I knew I wasn't the top of the list. You know, like Billy and Betty, and these people have proven what they can do.
Right.
You know, let's see, these engines were 625 horse, and we've got one down here for 300. I'll sell you that. Thanks anyway. You know. So I went to a company called McBetts, two partners in it, John Betts and John McNamara.
Yeah. Yep.
And they had built the engines for Stan Pike's boat, the Sutphin, the 30-foot Sutphin Inferno, the year before. And the boat was great. I mean, the engines were great. So John said, I'm going to do something different. We're not going to build your engines with fuel injection. I'm going to put two big 1050 carburetors on each engine. And he said, I can give you more torque, I can give you more horsepower. Be easier and cleaner to do it. I said, okay, whatever you. And boy, that boat moved.
Yeah, he was right there.
Yeah.
We took the fuel injection off and put two 1050s on it.
Yep.
And gained a lot of horsepower from it. The injection wasn't capable of metering the fuel to make the horsepower.
So I win the first race. I show up the second race, put the boat in the water. We're at the foreign ambassadors. And I'm walking through, I was walking with Rocky, as a matter of fact, walking through the lobby. And the guy comes up to me, Charlie McCarthy? I said, yeah. He goes, you've been served. Excuse me? He said, you've been served. Jean-Claude wanted me to change the name of the boat, that it was no longer a banana boat, now it's a Coyote.
Okay.
So this is on the weekend. So I called Don. I said, he goes, first of all, get the boat out of there before he impounds it or done something stupid like that. And secondly, he gave me the name of a lawyer friend. He said, this guy will stop it. So I called Ted Theodoli, and I said, I got a situation here. I need to move the boat. I need somebody safe. So I moved it down to Magnum. They put it inside for me and till the day of the race and all that kind of stuff. But
so ultimately, you ran it as a Coyote for a couple of years there.
Well, let's just say by the time I had finished 79, which was that year, I'd gone to these two races. I was ready to go to Detroit, and there was a nationwide truck strike. Don called me and he said, do not even think about going to the race. Take care of your business. So I did with that. Next race I came to was Benihana. We ended up blowing an engine. So by that time, it was like, my business was, I was either building companies. I built a conglomerate that had basically 17 companies underneath it.
Right.
Mainly in transportation and leasing, which got me into finance and all that type of thing. I ended up my career in 2010 as chairman of the board of a regional bank in New England, just under $1 billion in assets.
Wow.
So paying attention to the business.
Right.
So I took the rest of that year off, focused on the business. The following year, I hadn't intended to race, but I get a nice phone call, and the gentleman says, do you still have the boat? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, we have a sponsorship that sponsored another boat for the first race, which was no longer Bushmills, now it was somebody else sponsoring. And, but we want a bigger boat, a proven boat. I said, okay. So he didn't tell me who it was. And everything he said, like, well, what would you need? And I said, well, we have to paint the boat, have to paint the tractor trailer, have to get all new uniforms, get new helmets, get new jackets, get first-class tickets for my wife and I and to the races. I need 2 helicopters. And I'm just saying, whatever comes into my head. I'm
Whenever they
saying.
stop you, you just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. And a tulip in a, palm tree or whatever. And the guy kept saying yes. I said, okay, then, all right. So he said, well, come on down. Do you ever get to New York? And I said, oh, yeah, I have a lot of customers in New York, and I get down there a lot. So he said, well, come on down. We'll have a nice conversation. Give me the address. Still no name. I have no idea whether this is a sneak attack from Bernie trying to get me to be the natural light guy or Disneyland. I had no idea. So I go down and go upstairs to this, get off on the right floor, and the elevator doors open, and it says, Economic Development Office for the government of Puerto Rico. So I went in, and the conference room, and they said, oh, nice to meet you. So the deal was, Puerto Rico is a commonwealth. It's not a state. So every bottle of rum made in Puerto Rico that's purchased in the United States, part of the price that we pay is the federal excise tax. Because they're not a state, the federal government has to return that tax money to Puerto Rico at the end of the fiscal year. So the idea was, the presentation, they said, here's how we want to work this. We want you to bring the boat in to a race site 2 days early. We will get our distributors and liquor buyers and, all that type of liquor stores, whoever gets our stuff out, we'll have them come in. I said, well, I'm not going to give people rides on the boat 2 days before. No. Just have it set up on your tractor trailer and we'll build a stand and they'll come and they'll see it and all that kind of stuff. I said, okay. So then what happens? Well, the night before the race, we're going to have the biggest party ever seen. And it's all is invited and all the drinks are free. But you drink martinis, you drink old fashions. We're going to make you a martini with rum and make you an old fashioned with rum. Because we want to break this American consciousness that rum and Coke, that's all there is.
Right.
So he said, then, we'll get people drinking that and enjoying them, all that type of thing, and hopefully it'll stick. So I said, all right, what I'd like to do, because I find it much easier to do a business deal if we can quantify it. So I'd like to know, we're going into Point Pleasant, for example, the geographical area, how many cases of rum were being purchased before we showed up?
Right.
How many are purchased during this weekend? And then I want every month a report of how high that's staying
Absolutely.
after we leave.
A receipt for your worth.
Right.
Yeah.
So we did that. And I said, by the way, as I was leaving the meeting and everyone's agreed, okay, this is a good deal. I said, by the way, how much money did the federal government give to you? And they said, last year, and that would have been I think the last reported year was 1978, $345 million. And I said,
Wow.
well, that's the reason why you didn't flinch when I just told John here that
I'd be
the
restructuring
no,
that.
the prices that I quoted you're going to double now, and
So-
I appreciate that.
$355 million in
345.
in 1978.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like
That's just a portion of it. Don't forget.
right.
Now, here's the key. It's not Bacardi. It's not Don Q. It's rums of Puerto Rico, which
Right.
means all the
All of it.
brands.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and also so incredible that, as you notice, if you look through the annuals of offshore racing, there are other Don Q and all those others, because once the natives of Puerto Rico found out that this is a great sponsorship, the guy from Rhode Island didn't get it anymore.
Oh, man. Wow. That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
to try to wrap your head around that's an enormous deal. I mean, that's insane.
But I had sold a boat to a friend of mine, one of my own boats, banana boat. And he was a top executive in Philip Morris, which, okay, I go down and see him. We'd have lunch in New York and all that. But the 70s was a very unique period in promotion and advertising because the cigarette companies were no longer allowed to have television advertising. However, those budgets were still over here. They didn't know what to do with them.
Right.
So he said to me, when I sold him a boat, he loved the boat, and some of those people loved the boat that went on. And he said, listen, can you take like a couple of weeks off? I said, yeah. What? He said, going to Europe, and I'd like you to be my guest. Sure, I'd love that. So we went to Europe, and he took me to Wimbledon, Virginia Slims. They sponsor that. He took me to the French Grand Prix, Marlboro cigarettes. Now, Marlboro in Europe was jet set. It was that very elitist type of, where Marlboro in the United States is the cowboy, the Marlboro man type of thing. So he said, and I learned all these unique, facets of marketing stuff like that, and how to put together promotion and, like really.
It's an extremely intricate world.
Yeah.
There's so many different avenues. I mean, through OPA, I've learned a bit about it, and you can really appreciate in today's day and age, looking back at what you experienced there, at how critical that was in the developmental process of Offshore today. Because today, coming past the sponsors, pretty much impossible anymore. So you look back at that was so important. We wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for that specific thing.
Well, they eventually ended up sponsoring Marlboro, sponsoring some because they felt it was elite enough that it could tie the Marlboro brand in with offshore racing.
Right.
But they sponsored races like in Lake Luzon. No.
Right.
Lake Geneva. No, we're talking about ocean.
Right.
No, we're headquartered here in Switzerland, so we want to, I understand that,
Right.
But they asked for other ideas, like what can we do with tennis, or what can we do with, can we? But anyway, I had a couple of great weeks.
I guess that's what I was with Arano, experimental and development.
There you go.
Because he never argued about giving me a new boat.
No, Billy got his boats. He didn't
got
buy
all
them.
my boats from Arano. I got the 35. I think that cost me $9,000 or $12,000. I got the 39 black boat for free. The 40-footer was Mercury. They couldn't own it though, so I had to.
Yep.
The 39, 239, the blue one and the red one, they didn't cost anything. And engine didn't cost anything. It just...
Was that kind of the beginning of like the factory race team? Was that where that?
Because the factory race team started in the very beginning. Mercury used to sponsor 15 boats.
Yeah.
Well, Mercury, but then right around that time is when the manufacturers started really putting out.
I don't think anybody ever got free boats.
No.
I think I was the only one that ever got them.
Yeah.
Because in the late
Sammy James, who was Bertram.
In the late 80s to the mid 90s, there was a lot of factory teams. Like Velocity had factory teams. Yeah, every Formula, Donzi, they all had a couple of boats.
That's when that F2 and F1 started.
Yes.
Yes, that's different. So this was, and that's why the section I put in my book, I call it the golden era. Because literally anybody, if they had talent in seamanship, could walk into a factory, buy a boat, put a team together, and go out and win.
That was the bad part. That's when I became a commissioner. If you had the money, you could buy the boat, you could buy the speed, but you didn't know how to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you go out there and you get hurt, or somebody else would get hurt.
Right.
I remember Visconti. You remember him, Dominic Visconti?
With the original Popeye.
He used to ride with two bodyguards. And these guys would get out of the boat and kiss the ground. Back to the America's Cup. I once, at the furniture show, I met John Connors. I had my sales rep take me up to meet him. I said, I got to meet this man. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I just have to meet him. I'll be good. I go up and I meet John Connors. Well, John Connors was an arrogant man. He'd get on the radio and the smoke pots and the muscle boats. And of course, he's a big rag man. I get up there and Mr. Connors, I said, we have something in common. And he looks at me and goes, what do we have in common? I go, well, we both won the America's Cup. But I didn't give mine back.
Oh boy. Oh man. Perfect. Perfect.
It was. My sales rep drags me away from him, and his face was red. There was smoke coming out both ears.
Oh man, I wish so badly that the heyday of Offshore was documented better. You know,
Yeah.
and this, it's so cool to have you guys here. You
Well,
elaborated to and that's what I was going to get to. You elaborated to your book there. What's the title of your book?
I have a series of books, and they're called Blue Water Warriors, and they're done by years. So this represents what I call the golden era, from 1970 to 1980. All the boats in this. This is Rocky's boat on the cover. And the book I'm working on now is called The Innovators. And The Innovators covers from the middle of the 1950s through to 1969.
Right.
So by 1969, which I have in here, a picture of Don,
Right.
this is the standard if you want to win. A boat that's at least 30 feet long, with staggered engines, with a crew of 3, with multi-fuel tanks that enables you to go way out of sight of land or anything like that. And that standard, you could still win a race in 1980.
Right.
So that was it. You know, not until after 81 or so did they start getting like the 41 Apaches and
Right.
the bigger boats type
Right.
of thing, you know?
Now, what was right around that era? The Apache really came in headstrong. You know, that it kind of switched pretty quickly there to the standard was Apache. What made the Apache different from like a 39 cigarette or a 35 cigarette? Just the extra length?
He had better equipment, meaning drives were better, the engines were better. Don't forget they got the Lamborghini engines,
Right.
you know?
That they didn't work though.
Well,
that wasn't that. They were still Merc Cruiser was still the
Which-
number
yeah.
one.
Which one was famous for those Lamborghini engines? Was it In Excess with the wide pipes and the Lamborghinis? I'm trying to remember.
no, I think Keek Aker he had an unlimited budget with Kramer.
Right.
So,
I ran his design actually. So earlier I was telling you about that Class 1 motor I ran in the Green Boat. That was a motor that was built and designed by Keith. And from the computer controlled velocity stacks on top of the intake and to the those crazy heads that he was fooling with, and it was when we first got it. I have to elaborate. Bob Costa, who runs a 40 Skater that he bought from Tom Abrams, who ran Reliable Carriers later in the Supercat era there. I was hanging out with him when I was probably 13 years old, and was telling him about actually the boat's here. It's right out in front of the building. A yellow Checkmate that I was putting together for Class 6 at the time was 70 miles an hour, just under 26 foot. And I was working on a small block, and I'm 13, 14 years old. It was never going to happen. My old man was just tired of me asking him for a race boat every day. So he's like, here, build this one.
yeah.
So I had like a little 305 I was trying to put together for this Checkmate. And so Costa goes, let me go talk to your old man. Walks up to my old man. He goes, what kind of father are you? And my dad goes, what are you talking about? He goes, you guys are engine builders. You're running the sport. You got the craziest race boats in the country. And your son's putting together a small block Checkmate to go run Class 6. What are you doing? He goes, give me your address. When I get back to Michigan, I'm going to send something to him. So people say that.
Yeah.
Never really happens, right? We're here. My dad calls me. He calls the landline at the time back then. I pick up the phone. He goes, well, a crate showed up for you. So that weekend I got in the truck and came to work,
right.
take the top of the crate off, and here's this Keith Eichert 510 cubic inch, 1,000 horse, 13-to-1 compression, moving velocity stack. My dad calls him and goes, you want me to put this in a Checkmate? He goes, I got him the motor, you get him a boat.
There you go.
That's how I wound up with the Green Boat. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I grew up with that engine. That engine was built to run in like close to 9,000 RPM. So for what I was doing with it, to run 70 miles an hour was 5,300 RPM. The motor lived forever. So I ran that from 2019 all the way to 2015, and I grew with that motor. Everything I learned. I wasn't necessarily a mechanic here. I did bottom paints, water pumps, stuff like that. That was what gave me my start, was learning that motor. And I have so much respect for Keith because the products, like you said, with the unlimited budget, the stuff that he could build, he was a wild man.
I mean, he doesn't.
I have less fuel tank capacity than I did when I was younger. So I'm going to have to leave
Yeah, go ahead.
just for a quick.
It's no problem. We can take a break.
I can't do the 500s anymore. Like I used to.
Just watch the wires for that fun.
Yep.
I know. I created quite a booby trap room in here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's good to see you, Bill.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? You want to pause this?
Oh, we'll
Keep
just
going,
leave it rolling. When Charlie comes back, we'll get going. Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, I miss the sport. I don't miss the politics, but I miss
I definitely hear
Right.
that, buddy.
the building engines and
Yeah.
still sitting up there in the barn.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was laughing before this. We were, when Ernie had first called me about Charlie coming in, I was like, wow, I mean, how cool is that for me, And then so when it evolved into having you come in too, I mean, this is just too cool,
I didn't know he made books.
Oh, he's got some really awesome stuff there.
Yeah,
The book on the bottom, I guess you can't buy anymore. Mike made that, Arno. And there's only a few copies of it, and it's really, really interesting.
Huh.
But I don't know why you would need it. I think you probably helped create half that book.
Probably, yeah.
He called you research and development. I think you were a science
I
experiment.
was like Aaron's adopted son. He's seen himself in me. He even admitted that.
Right.
I took him out for a ride in that Black 39. I mean, that boat was built for Ballasteri, and they lost it on Lake X.
Wait, hang on, because I want to
Yeah,
get
let's
this.
get this in the show.
We can talk until Charlie comes back.
They lost it on Lake X. It ended up in the boondocks, and Ballasteri wouldn't get in that boat.
Right.
And I seen it up there, and I wanted that boat. It was a special one-race boat. They built it for Key West. I went down, I talked to Aaron into giving it to me, and he put it together. And we went out for a ride, and he was throttling it, and we were running, and boat's running 82, 85. So I knocked his hands off the throttles, and I grabbed the throttles, and I was trimming it. And a boat went up over 90 miles an hour, 92, I think it was. The skin on his face went back around his neck, and it was flapping. He's hitting my hands trying to get him off the throttles. This boat ran so beautiful, and it was good 5-6 foot. It just got up on top and just walked across everything.
Right.
The next day we put the boat in the water, and I'm out there running the boat, and Aaron was up there in a helicopter, and I look around, there's a whole swarm of helicopters. I figured, oh, geez, I got the cops, the Coast Guard, and everybody else chasing me. Well, he's up there. He's got all these helicopters. He's got all these people in the helicopters, and he's up there riding, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And I'm out there busting my tail in this rough water, running as hard as I could, and the boat was just beautiful. It just hung up there on the top and just floated.
Right.
Here he is. Development,
Yeah,
Experimental
I told Billy Charlie that I don't think he was research and development. I think he was a science experiment.
Well, Mercury gave me the nickname, the reputation that I could break an anvil. And the one thing they wanted me to blow the engine.
Right.
I had to run hard.
They had to know what would go wrong.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
but then they sold me out. The guys in Fond du Lac, instead of giving me the experimental motors, they gave them to Del Monte. Who was that?
Menard.
You don't have Billy.
Michelle Menard.
Yeah.
Billy,
No.
just pull that mic around a little closer, dude. It'll stretch. That whole arm lays
Yeah.
down. There you
There
go.
you go. Perfect.
They gave my engine to someone else. They gave me their motors. And I brought the motors back to the shop because the boat wouldn't run. We took them apart, and we sent back the pieces of the garbage that they had in the motors. But that was Mercury.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
something that before we move on from all this, the cool thing about having both of you here, a lot of people ask like, who was Rocky Aoki? Who was Betty Cook? Like, the literature's not there. You can't, like, guys today, my generation, unless they had my good fortune of being able to talk to you guys, and especially you over the years, I would never know any of these names. There's no way to find any of this stuff. Like, with YouTube today, there's a lot of, good old footage, but it doesn't give you, it gives you the name, the boat, and you can see it run, but it doesn't tell you anything about who these people were. What was it like running in that class with, in my opinion, the toughest competition that ever existed in offshore?
I look back at it, and I was a rabbit. I was the lead. If I'd have been smart, backed off, held back, waited to the last 20, 50 miles, and then went, I think I'd have won 3 times the races I did. Because we had the speed, we had the know-how, and we were pretty tough guys. I mean, you run 180 miles of getting smacked in the chest with a 4x4. Or taking 90 G-forces that you hit a wave and you would black out for an instant.
Right.
Because you're hitting so hard. It was just so much fun, though. You had to be the leader. You had to run hard, and doing that got me where I got to because Mercury wanted that, and Arano wanted that. Arano wanted the wind. Mercury wanted the experimental.
Right.
I mean, they when they came out with the EFI engines, they couldn't make a run because they didn't understand the engine compartment got hot.
Right.
And the fuel injection went crazy. It just bogged down.
Right.
So one day we take a couple of engineers out for a ride out in the rough stuff. And they said, oh, we never thought of this. And they cured it. They put more air in the engine compartment. The EFI ran decent. But like Charlie said, there's no substitute for carburetors. You can dial the fuel into them.
And it's funny what you can do today. Like in the Super V Light that I'm sorry, Pro Stock V, I keep messing that up, the name changed. But in that Phantom that I run now, bilge temps everything. Like you said, the EFIs, if you can keep the bilge pump down, or the bilge temp down, they make a lot better power. And like just silly things that I found, like running reverse Nakaducks for, pulling air rather than forcing air. And the backside of that, I would run to a tube that actually looped around with 3 different openings that's attached to stringers right next to the headers. Because what's the hottest thing in the bilge? So rather than trying to move this massive amount of air in and out of the bilge, I decided to just try to pull the heat off of the most hot surfaces. And it's crazy, like the first run we did where I didn't have any of that, just a shakedown run, the boat ran good numbers. As soon as we went to focusing on those things, propellers, bilge temp, stuff like that, 5, 6, 7 mile an hour, just in small incremental changes. It's crazy the research that you can put into these.
You take the scoops. Everybody puts the scoops facing forward because it's going to suck the air in. Doesn't.
It doesn't even hit
the
it.
air out.
Yeah.
You get the scoop, the air from the back of the boat.
Yep. A funny
we
funny you say that.
We were the first ones that found that.
Funny you say that, and I'm happy you just said that. We spent some time. If you've seen the Supercat AMH, the orange Supercat, the last couple of years, my brother's been running that, and they had a guy come walking through the pits, some aerospace engineer that really understood like moving air and how things get deflected, and so they had these scoops, or actually a single scoop off the back of the canopy, and a guy walks up and goes, "That's not doing anything." They're like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "If it was 10 feet higher, it would, but the air's hitting the windshield, and it's not even getting close." He goes, "I bet you, if you took me out in this boat, I could prove to you that the air's coming out of that scoop harder than you think." So they were like, "Come on, come on." So they went back home, and they put yarn all over the thing and set up some GoPros in the bilge and went for a run. Sure as shit. Air coming right out of the scoop, not doing anything for the boat other than slowing it down with drag.
We used to run those high
remember those?
off the hatches facing forward. Oh, man, this is the trick setup.
Look cool.
Well, one day we put pigtails on the front of it, and they're blowing this way.
Yeah. It's crazy because you would never think that.
No,
Yeah.
you would think it's going to ram the air
Yeah.
in there. and
When we
it
did the
doesn't.
fountain in 2006, when we got the fountain, nobody had tractor headers. That wasn't a thing. All the exhaust went out the back under the dovetails. And so we were like, well, nobody understood back then that the tailpipes going out the back were only maybe 5 pounds heavier than if you shortened them a little bit and stuck them out the top. So who was going to go through all that work?
Yeah.
But never factored in how much water fills those pipes on the way back versus those short pipes going up. So that's just what we did to lose some weight.
Yeah.
And then what we found was actually on accident, we just didn't have time. We didn't close the holes in the back of the transom where the original pipes went. And if you watch a fountain run in like the 2000 to 2005 range, when they're perfect, like if you watch like Reggie or Reggie 3 or any of those guys run a boat, Siebold, Robinson, any of those guys, they're fantastic at attitude. And the boat will pick up an attitude, and it'll pick up like a skater gets a halo, right? A fountain gets that roll in the back, that vacuum roll of when the steps are working perfect and everything's right. Well, what we found is once we did that, we had video of the boat running, and there was no roll. There was no exhaust roll behind the boat. And we were like, oh, we broke the vacuum.
Yeah.
Not even realizing that that's where all the air is behind the boat. And it was just an accidental thing. And it was crazy. We actually gained top speed out of it. I mean, we learned that in Tennessee. Were you with us on that Tennessee run that year?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, when we went out to Chattanooga, and we had a kilo run set up, and that boat would always run 107, 108, stock 525s. And we went out there with our biggest set of wheels to do the speed run, and it ran like 110, 111 just from that little vacuum trick.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, man.
And fresh water, you lose 3 miles an hour.
Right.
Right.
Right. So yeah, probably gained more, Pretty wild, man. Those are things that people don't take into account, and especially when they look at your era. Because what it evolved into was, and I always use the adage, it won't go, just add another big block. Because you see like those catamarans that came late, 4 engines, if they could have put 6, they would have.
Well, that was a problem with the 40-footer. Bill Sterrett, his motto was length and strength. Make them long and put the power in them. Well, the 40 needed a 3rd engine. And that thing would have run really good. But with 2 engines in it, you've got the 36 with the big flared deck.
Yeah.
And it was good for rough water. That was it.
Right. Right.
But the 39, Arno brought the sides up and streamlined it more, and big difference.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I get out, when the superboats came in.
Yeah.
I realized I've got a great picture of after the McCarthy race we were just talking about. I'm sitting on the dock with Betty, and I can remember the conversation clear as a bell. I said, I really think what you and Joel are doing, they brought, Joel and Betty, that race brought 2 cats. Plus they had the deep V boats.
Not to cut you off. What were those cats?
Cougars.
Okay.
Made out of wood.
Right. So
Okay.
it's funny, not to cut you off, but that is like one of my favorite iconic boats was Herkama, the Cougar there.
Yep.
And for people listening wouldn't understand like what that was for its day and age was a fantastic build.
The first successful boat was Yellow Drama. That boat was then sold to Rocky, who ran as Benihana,
Right.
and then Limit Up, I think, leased it, and they ran it. They were going to run it in '77 at the World Championships, but it was too rough, so they ran their. Well, they had 3 boats. They had a 35, a 40,
the 40,
and the Cat.
that's where the other 40 went. We were trying to figure that out. I thought there was only 2 40s made.
When you got Magoons too for Miami,
Right.
New York. So yours, Miami, New York, and Limit Up,
Yeah, Narskog, he had the first 39,
and the first 35.
5, yeah.
Yep. So it's amazing how these things go back and forth, up and down, and stuff like that. But when I realized that, saying to her, you stop bringing 2 boats, what's going to happen next is the owners are going to say, I don't want to run in rough water. I want to run in calm water.
Right.
And the promoters are going to start saying, okay, we're going to start doing that. And like the Greek philosopher Seneca said, what is the prize worth if there is no dust?
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
I used to bring the 2 boats. I brought the 40 and the 35, and I picked my boat the morning of the race and then let the crew run the other one.
Right.
In fact, we even ran Mona Lou, the old turbine boat. That was a play boat that I had, and I used to let the crew run it. We put a pair of 496s in it and used the V drives and.
Wow.
I,
And you don't know how right you are. And with losing the offshore, I don't want to say offshore. Offshore is a hard term because it encompasses everything we do. But losing that ocean rough water running, right about the time where you're talking about there, it's been a downslide from there all the way to now. And I am particularly upset with that. I love ocean running. As much as I love the places we go. Bill, you competed in St. Clair with us, so you like. As fun as that is, a great town, amazing place for a race, great people, awesome fans. I mean, that place is the Daytona 500 of boat racing anymore. The amount of people that come to watch that race.
That's not ocean race.
But it's not. No. It's not. Like when I would go there with the green boat, people would think like that was when I was like, whew, because it wasn't rough.
I mean, we ran against the Pearl there.
Yes.
The other 36.
Yep.
yeah.
And I mean, we would get down under the windshield. And we were
well,
running neck and neck.
Yep.
Neck and neck. And when I turned, he turned. Only
Right.
thing is, he turned outside of me and I turned inside.
Right.
So I could gain a little bit.
Yeah.
But we ran the whole race just like that. Now, if that was offshore,
Yeah.
and you're out in the ocean and you're running over waves, I mean, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's a drag race.
I do enjoy the driving aspects of some of the flat water stuff we do. I do enjoy mixing it up, kind of doing the car racing kind of deal with the boats. But I long for when I started racing, we didn't have lake races. Like we went from Point Pleasant to Seaside to Ocean City to Atlantic City to Miami, Florida, to every race was 6 to 8s. There was no, every race you were de-rigging your boat, re-rigging your boat. That was fun to me. When we do what we do now is equally as cool for like the fan aspect of everything, but I miss sailing them. I long for those haymaker days, when the Coast Guard's looking at you like their knees are shaking, and it's like, that's fun,
I've always been a fan of like your OPA, where you have to have a start to get the public into the sport.
Yeah, right.
To get them bit.
Right.
And once they get bit, they're going to graduate and go bigger and bigger and bigger.
I don't see, my opinion, I don't see any reason why what you're doing cannot have a open ocean offshore leg too.
So there is.
In other words, you have these groups, these fives. Okay, now if you guys want to move up, first of all, make it affordable. Okay, we're not going to have any boats bigger than 30 feet.
Right.
So you can have a 20, 25, and a 30. This boat runs X number of horsepower, that's it. Maybe outboards if you want to start with something simple, this and that. And okay, and it'll be 75 or 80 mile race.
The main hurdle you face today, what you guys used to do, if I were to take a plan, like take your most well thought out event that you guys went to back then, if I were to go to the local authorities today to permit that race and provide a safety plan, and they would shoot me down in a heartbeat because they aren't willing to accept risk. Like there is no risk anymore. I have to have an answer for every single thing we do. If I wanted to do this, and this is a controversial, not everybody agrees with me. I wanted to run one long lap. Like what we do today, you get, say, 18 boats in, say, Class 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're very tight, very, in a group, and your starting position and your exit position coming out of the first turn kind of dictates what happens for the rest of the race. My thought was, what if we put another set of buoys a mile down the course and every team had to run one long lap? That way, it wasn't mandated as to when you ran that lap. It was your choice. It could be the last lap of the race if you want. But it broke up the group and let people get their legs under them, get them rolling, you know?
When we did we brought it back in 2008, Harbor. We did Miami to Bimini and back,
Yes.
100 miles. But because of the word racing, we did it as a timed event.
Right.
So therefore, clock was working when you left. And if you happen to overtake somebody, well, but everyone had their own class, then when it was all over, we compared times. Oh,
Right.
you know, that's about, I ran Don's Formula 233, the cigarette in.
We did that a couple of years later as well, I believe in 2010. We had Sunny Isles Beach, Brad Schoenwald put that together, and we left out of there to Bimini and back.
Yep.
And to answer your question, why can we do that today? We 100% can do that today. It's just a lot more work.
No,
Yeah.
you
But-
can't. The boats aren't made for it.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah,
you're
that's
right.
the other-
You're
you're right.
100% right.
We're
But they're
thinking of the old days.
I know.
but
when
those
we had
guys
300 gallons of fuel and
but those boats are still around. And with today's fuel injection
well, I got
and-
one.
Yeah, and like there's outboard boats today that can run 250, 300 miles.
Yeah.
The hard part is today is a lot driven from the fan aspect of things, the monetizing aspect of things, how to get the sponsors
You
involved.
talk about the fans. The fans remember those old races
Yes.
Yeah.
where they used to go out and then come back 2 hours later.
Yes, but the
When-
thing is now, when we secure sponsorship now, they want to know where those fans are going to be. They want, like, if a bar gets involved, they want to know that those fans are going to watch the race from their bar.
They want to see the name.
Right, and so there's a lot, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. It's very possible, and there is a group doing it right now. Ocean,
Yeah, I know who you mean.
Ocean
From
Cup.
Key West.
yeah, and they just
Ocean.
they ran an event just last year to Catalina and back, and I know it's time trials. It's not exactly the same, but it's close.
Catalina and back. We used to do up and down the coast, over to Catalina, down to the next island, back up, and then in.
They're trying.
In fact, one of the races that I ran with Roger Hanks in a little 27-footer, I got Roger Hanks. He's the navigator. He knows that. He's a big ocean racer. So he's navigating. So we're going to San Diego to turn. Well, I'm looking at the clock and I'm saying, well, we should be in here a long time ago. So I pull up to a fishing boat. Where are we? Up, too far south. Well, now Hank says, oh, we're going back in, aren't we? I said, no, we're not. We got the fuel. We're going to keep going. So we run the course. So I'm coming back across from Catalina, and Hank's just sitting up on the hatches. He's reading a magazine. I'm running 70 miles an hour. He runs 85. I come back. I look down. I got hit, and I look down. I see his shoes. I said, don't tell me that Hank's is sitting up there with his shoes off. I look back. There's no Hanks. Now, here I am, all by myself. I don't know that much about navigating yet. This is only like my second, third year. Where the heck is Hanks? I turn around, and I follow my wake back. And I look out, and I see an orange helmet. Oh, here's Roger sitting out there. I said, Roger, get in. We're still running in contention. I'm not getting back in that boat. Roger, shark. Shoot me.
Shot in the boat.
I think we won in the top 5 overall, even after blowing San Diego. And we're at the pitch, and Hanks is there, and he's got all his money. And he's got it out in the sun drying. And old man Keycafer walks up to him and says, Roger, congratulations. He says, what for? He goes, on finishing your first race. The next race he ran over in Sweden, he had all his money in his pocket, and he leaned over the engine hatches, and the injection sucked all his money through and spit it right out the back.
That's a story they wrote about in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a piece of work, let me tell you.
That's too funny, man. Oh, man. My cheeks hurt, guys.
Here he is floating out there. I wonder what he thought as I disappeared out over the horizon.
Do you remember Bill Cooper and Spooky?
Yeah.
439-mile race
Wow.
from Long Beach to San Francisco. 2 days it took. Bill Cooper enters a 17-foot formula, but the minimum length is 21 feet, so he adds a beak on
Yeah.
All right.
And he also has the pipes in the back.
in the back.
He's
So
sitting out behind the props. The
he
prop is under him.
he put the engine as far back as he could, and he sat with his 2 legs on either side of it with his back against the transom. But he needed another person on board. So he put out this frame with the pipes, with a seat on it, with a steering wheel for the guy to
Daryl
ride.
Jenkins.
Daryl Jenkins, right. Rode on the back, and the prop was right under him. So it was
You better hope you don't throw a propeller blade.
he finished second.
Wow.
Second. Only 439 miles, folks.
Wow.
You know? So when you hear about these, well, that boat isn't big enough. Really?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's wild. I think it's a lot of it is just the perception of what we do has changed a lot in the last 20
Yeah.
years. You know, well, really last 30 years. I mean, even in the 90s, it was more courses like we do today. But
Well, there isn't that much more to learn. We proved everything and built it up to where it all stay together.
right,
Now the only thing left is lighten it up and go faster.
right,
Yeah.
And you're not going to go fast being heavy for the ocean.
right.
And then nobody wanted to run 180 miles, and I don't blame them. That was brutal.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do it today.
I think cost comes into effect at some point too, where, you know, and obviously your situation was different and so was yours, but like today, for a guy, let's say we transplanted what we do now back into 1978. Nobody could afford today's technology just to tear it apart
Yeah,
every
I-
race.
5
you know?
furniture stores sponsoring me.
Yeah. Well, you get like today, like a basic outdrive, like a Bravo, right? Not a number 6 or a number 8 or anything. Just a basic outdrive. Bare minimum, you're going 10 grand. So you break an outdrive, you're almost out of the game if you're running on your shoestrings. Whereas back then, you could kind of piece things together and make things work. And you know, I think I don't understand it, to be honest. Like you look at the boat business today, like we have a customer down in Florida that we just sold an MTI to, a 50-foot MTI center console for $1.something million. It's like, what? When I was a kid, the boat that I grew up on is a 34 Scarab SS center console. My dad bought brand new for 80 grand.
Hmm.
You know, today that doesn't buy you the horsepower
A
on
brand
that.
new 36 with twin engine delivered to the customer was $35,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how much that has to do with it. I don't know if everything's relative as you go forward from there. I don't know, but I know like if I had to rebuild my race boat every couple of races, I couldn't afford to do it. You know.
You know, we used
Yep.
to change engines and drives every race.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes we change them before the race.
Right.
We also had an additional cost that nobody talks about, but we know about. That after you've finished a number of years racing and all that,
Oh, yeah.
you get the knock on the door. Hi, I'm from the IRS.
Yeah.
I got a triple corporate and a personal audit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cost me 5 years of my life. And you know what it was all over? One lousy plane ticket from the furniture market to a boat race in New Orleans. That's what they had me on.
Yeah. You don't.
They had
Nobody
me
talks
down
about
as
that.
as a marijuana distributor for New Jersey.
Yeah.
Every boat racer was involved in narcotics.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know what you know. There's a lot of you could go back in time and really point to a lot of things, but that's the stigma even today, and it bothers me. Not that I don't think that's definitely part of the history of offshore. That there was definitely guys that did a lot of that, but the way people today just make everything you guys did about that. It really turns your stomach. It's like you
Yeah.
have no idea. If that's what you think offshore was, don't get me wrong. I know it was involved. I know it was there. I know it was, but that's not what offshore was. It's just people glorify that today. And it's like, why take away, all you're doing is degrading it. You're not being a tough guy, badass, one of these cowboys.
Yeah.
That's not at all what we were or what we are or what what makes us great today. That's
No,
not.
it's the greatest thrill there is out there. It's like
That's it.
grabbing a bull by the horns.
We're a bunch of adrenaline junkies that found the best way to get our fix. That's what it is. That's all it is. There was none of that. I mean,
no
it's
speed limits, no laws, no rules.
right. I laugh. I have buddies of mine that they I've never had a hot rod. Like I've never had like a car, a fast car or a fast truck or. People are like, why don't you have all the capability in the world? Why don't you do? I'm like, because you get tickets and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get in trouble. I'll take my boat out. There's no rules.
It only lasts a couple of seconds.
Right.
I mean, offshore, you can run for hours.
Dude, I'm just as bad as anybody else. If I were to get my hands on a fast car, I'd lose my license in a week. I'm bad that way. I know that, so I stay on the water.
See, when I left offshore, I left with Preston and Sandy Satullo, and we went into IMSA, car racing. So I left boat racing behind because I knew I couldn't afford the 52-footers with 4 engines and the deep V and the lightweight cat and all that stuff. But I got into the endurance stuff, the 24 hours of Daytona, the 12 hours of Sebring and stuff like that. And, that's how I kept that adrenaline rush going.
Right.
Sandy and I did the Cannonball.
We were running IROCs? Was it Camaros?
What do you mean, for the Cannonball?
Yeah.
No, I've
seen some pictures.
Yeah, I broke 2 records in the Cannonball. One was the fastest crossing of the United States in a diesel-powered automobile because my trunk was a fuel cell.
Right.
And 36 hours, 19 minutes. And the second was the
30
highest speed
I'm sorry, not to stop you.
from the East Coast to
In 36 hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the second was Mansfield, Ohio. Great little town. The highest speeding fine ever paid, $900. I'm sure that the speed time has been broken by now, but I
Sure,
don't
but I
think the fine has.
I know it takes me about that long just to get to Key West.
No.
You went all the way to California.
Yeah, all the way to California. And I wasn't the winner. I came in like 6th out of 46 cars.
Wow.
Sandy came in, I think, 8th or 9th.
That's crazy.
I had the truck driver, Bob DeWan. You remember him?
I remember that name, yeah.
He used to drive for me, and he went from Miami to Arizona.
Phoenix?
The lake,
Oh, Havasu.
Havasu, in 28 hours.
Wow.
And he was watching a boat race in Havasu on his way to San Diego. And he went 28 hours in a little tractor trailer.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's trucking, man.
He was nonstop. That guy. Those were the days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was easier then. I mean, the traffic was lighter, stuff like that. They've actually, since COVID has started, people have taken advantage of that. And now the fastest crossing they did last year with no traffic and no anything else, like 26 hours
Wow.
from East Coast to West Coast.
Wow.
Jesus.
That's crazy.
And,
You'd need a
But-
sponsor just
That's
for all the
over
speed.
100 mile an hour average.
well, they said they did not exceed. They were very thoughtful. They did not exceed 197 miles an hour. That was the fastest thing they had recorded.
Man, that's funny. So you wind up racing cars there for a little while after
Yeah.
the entrance of Modified.
Yeah.
So, and then the next time we see you is with Sicenti, and who else came down with you? You came to Point Pleasant for us, and
Yeah, well, Billy.
Billy.
Rocky.
And Rocky.
Yeah. We were the legends of offshore.
Still are.
And
I got a good one for the legend. I get pulled over up on Route 80 by state police, and the cop's going to give me a ticket.
Hey Billy, not to interrupt you, but we can't hear this story. There you go.
The trooper's going to give me a ticket, and we start talking a little bit. He's from down the shore. I told him, well, I race boats. He says, yeah, what kind? We did the offshore. He goes, are you any good at it? I said, well, I'm fair. He says, well, my buddy knows everything about offshore. I'm going to call him. And if you're any good, I'll let you go. He calls his buddy, and his buddy is in Linden. And he says, Billy Martin, he's a legend. Let him go. Ever since then, everybody calls me the legend.
I wish I had that kind of pull today.
That's
I tell them I'm a legend, but they don't believe me.
Yeah, we lost Rocky like within a year after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that clear as day because I was just a kid then. That was 2007.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting all you guys for the first time, and Rocky was the only one I could look in the eye. And I just thought that was so
That
cool.
poor guy, he should have won more races. Smitty never gave him a chance. Rocky would be driving his boat, and he'd look this way, and he'd turn that way. And Smitty would never back off. He'd spin that boat out. We're out in California racing, and he's ahead of me. And I'm looking at him, I'm following, we're running, and I'm looking at him. All of a sudden, he's coming that way. He's going that way. Smitty never backed off. He never gave the guy a chance. He just poured it to him and then cursed him out.
And this is the same Smitty that ran Dirty Laundry, and is that...
No.
No, Harold
different.
Smith.
Harold Smith.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Harold ran the red modified cat, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, right.
Dirty Laundry.
Yeah, all right.
I actually have, I could show you guys when we get out of the room here. I actually have Smitty's life jacket. I have his lifeline and a bag embroidered Benihana and Smitty under it. I have over there. Somebody gave it to me. They actually made a mistake because my dad is Smitty, and they were like, "Oh, I have something of your dad's from years ago," and so they brought it to me, and I didn't say anything. I waited till they left, and I went, "I know who this is."
Yeah.
It's kind of cool piece of history to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. I watched a race. Smitty's notorious for that. I was watching some races a couple weeks ago and watching Dirty Laundry run, and that thing was loose as a goose, man. He was headstrong.
Yeah.
Nah.
But he ran with Tolman over in England.
Yeah, well, he ran with the Italians over there, and I mean, the guy, you got a class act, and you got Smitty, and Smitty's cursing these guys out, calling them every name under the book. And you think these guys don't understand what these words are?
We know all theirs, don't we?
I was walking along the docks in Cowes a couple of years ago.
How awesome was that?
And I see this big crowd on this dock, and I look over, and they're the British interviewing Steve Curtis. So he's standing there, and they're all, so I'm walking closer and closer behind me. You can't see me. And there's like a little lull in the conversation. I poked him in the rib in the back, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, aren't you Clive's boy?" He turned around. Oh my God! And so
How cool! Like how awesome was Cows? I mean,
oh yeah. I mean it's just like being in 1975 at Benihana.
yeah.
They love the sport. They love the people involved. They love the drivers.
I take any chance I get when I see some footage and stuff. Any chance I get, I watch that. That is so cool.
I ran cows, and I had Doxford, and there's a place called Portland Bill.
Right.
Well, you'd be running in flat, calm water, full trim, tabs level, and Doxford just kept pushing me. Pushed me right into Portland Bill, 15-footers with full trim. Oh, that was a trip.
You know what's funny is we laugh today when we go to like a driver's meeting and we're in the ocean. One of the things we say is, guys, it's a big ocean. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no need to be running on top of each other.
Yep.
Right? And it never fails. That green flag goes up, and we could be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's near. It's like, guys, come on, give them a little room.
When we were down in Mar del Plata, they raced us into a rock wall, a jetty, and the turn was right there. So Betty and me and Doxford and
Gentry.
No, Gentry wasn't there. Anyway, we all formed a pact that we weren't going to take off until after we made this turn. So they run us
Yeah,
down
sure.
the beach.
I know all about these packs.
No, it was all right. We ran down the beach, and as soon as we made that turn, we turned right into 15-foot seas, head seas.
Right.
And we're all trying to get up on top, and you got all these boats going. But to run straight into a wall
Yep.
and have to turn,
Yeah.
oh,
I'll tell you, the only time in my experience that I've seen that was the year, I believe it was 2006. We raced in Puerto Rico, and we raced in the harbor of Old San Juan, and that was I guess that would be turn 3 and 4. And as we came out, there was a buoy on the end of the harbor, and you made that right. And that day, it was rough. I mean, it was every bit of 10. I don't know how much bigger it could have got. I wasn't in the boat. They were, but watching my father compete there in our 38 Fountain against Fury at the time was a 40 Phantom that Will Smith had built with number 6s. And we had Bravos on the Fountain, and it was a war. I mean, it was huge. And that was the coolest part to me, was watching who could navigate that turn out of the harbor the best. And I got to give it to them. If they listen to this, they're going to kill me because I forgot their names. But they ran Brian and Kevin. Brian and Kevin, I can't remember their last name. Somebody will correct me when this comes out. But they ran a Levy craft, a canopied Levy craft in the single engine V category with a 525. And that boat was nose heavy. It was pretty prone to spinning out in some of the flat water races we would do. Yeah. But we went to Puerto Rico, and that thing would nose over and run, and they had the best line. It was one of those days where the bigger boats couldn't necessarily get up and over it, and the smaller boats, if you were smart, could get through it. And those guys were picking the field off. I mean, they would start to chuck a line away from that right-hander, get in the swell, and kind of chase it until they ran out. And they really understood
They'd drive up and down them.
And in and out of them. And, they really understood it. And it helped me as a kid to kind of learn because, I knew I was going to end up in a boat. My whole life was dedicated to that. And I remember watching those guys and being like, that's how you do it, because it really helped me when I got in my little boat to start off with.
When we were down in Uruguay, they had a race in really rough water, and it never should have been run. And because they had no patrol boats or anything, you were out there on your own. So we won the race and come in, and I took my daughter out for a ride in the boat. She's 9 years old, and she's driving the boat, and we're running 92 in the bay.
Oh gosh!
So I come in, and here's the Admiral. Oh, he was all dressed up in white with all his braids and all his stuff hanging off his shoulders. And I go, would the Admiral like to have a boat ride in a winning boat? I said, surely the Admiral isn't afraid. My 9-year-old daughter just drove it. With that, he gets in the boat. We get him in a suit, in a jacket, and a helmet. And we're out there, we're running in the bay, and we're running 92. And he's doing good. And I got Harry Wellman with me. He was my driver, so now he's just hanging in there. And we got microphones. And we're talking, and I point out the inlet. And the Admiral drives the boat out the inlet. Well, the waves are building and building and building, and it's like good 8 foot out there.
Right.
And I'm out there, I'm running hard. I'm running 85, 88 miles an hour over this. I'm telling, he'd fall down, I'd reach over and I'd pick him up. And I'm telling Harry, you're fired, Harry. I'm hiring this guy. He does a better job than you. And we come in, and we were out there for a good 20 minutes. And we come in, and he takes his jacket off, and he's all full of grease. His white uniform. His braids are hanging. All the stuff is falling off of him. He takes the helmet off, and there's blood coming out of the side of his mouth. I look at him, and we got the British ambassador and the American ambassador. The two of them, they're gone. Here I am, I just decked an Admiral. And the Admiral turns to me and says, Mr. Martin, you have made your point. If we ever have this race again, I'll come from my conning tower and inspect it at sea level.
That's my favorite. Whenever we get to take somebody out, like somebody who's not used to
no
what we do,
idea at all.
I get that. You know, like when you were a little kid and there was something cool coming up and you'd get that feeling, or like
Yeah.
you can't wait. I get that.
Oh,
I
I
put
wanted
people in the
him.
boat and I'm like, oh, I can't wait. To take them
I
out.
wanted this guy. He's the youngest admiral. He was 38 years old, and his men had to pick him up out of the boat
Perfect.
and carry him off the dock.
It's funny because in our head, if you're getting in to come for a ride, I want to show you. It's not. I'm not being mean to you or trying to scare you. I want to show you how cool this is. But not everybody thinks it's as cool as we do.
I'm still waiting for my experience.
Yeah, we'll get you in there. It is awesome. It's just it.
I'm 2 inches shorter
Oh yeah, yep.
because back then we didn't have Kevlar helmets. We had helmets. They were big helmets.
50-pound helmets.
And it just every time it came in on a wave, and
Well, you remember Arano? They used to have orange bathing caps.
yeah,
They'd take the helmets off, put the
Throw 'em
bathing
away.
cap on, and run. And when they came back in, they'd put the helmets back on.
Right.
Him and Naki would be tearing each other's clothes to make it look how rough it was
Yeah.
out there.
I was reading a story the other day. I'm a big MMA fan. I watch professional fighting, and they were doing a study on brain damage, and they had this doctor on, and I'm just listening to him, and he says, believe it or not, it can happen very easily. And they said the one way a lot of people get brain damage is riding jet skis, and I'm like, really? So I'm thinking to myself, if you only knew.
that's right. One step beyond that
if
is
you only knew. That's why we're all a little screwed up.
Well, I can't walk today because of my knees.
No.
I can't even complain to my wife because she said, well, you did it to yourself, you big dummy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I went to a chiropractor for the first time in my life a couple months ago, and the guy's like, I've never seen compression like this. And I'm like, yeah, I had a rough life. I don't want to tell him,
No,
the guy's
no.
like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I'm a mechanic. You work on boats? I said, yeah. He goes, you ever see any of those racing boats? I said, no, man, I've never been in one of those. I don't know what you're talking about.
The first time I went to a chiropractor, he x-rayed my back, and he goes, well, I've been waiting for you to come in here. He says, you race one more year, you'll spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And that got me out of offshore.
Today, the guys have a lot bigger resources available to them, like the suspension seats where the bottom's
Oh, we
bolted
had
to the
those.
coilovers.
Brownie had them, in fact. First wave he hit, it went,
Yep, eject those
he
seats.
put a truck seat in there.
We today it's super intricate. It's basically a coilover out of a truck,
Yeah.
and you can tune it to see. I've run boats where you get in and you start hitting waves and it moves a lot. So it gives you like this weird feeling of like it moves for no reason. Waves that weren't going to hurt you in the first place.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to drive and the steering wheel's going up and down and you're going up and down. I don't like that. The one we have in the fountain, you can dial in the pressure and it'll only respond if you hit something really hard. And the only problem I've had is I've bottomed it out sometimes. I'm not a little guy. So, we come down off a wave and I'll drive that thing down to the floor and it doesn't always come back very fast.
Yep.
So now you're trying to get back over the dashboard to see, but it does save you, man.
You don't think that's going to hurt your back more than standing?
Oh, I 100% think so, but it's hard to stand in the canopy.
Yeah.
But I run the Viper with my old man a bunch, and I prefer standing. I've only run sit downs, just because that's just how it played out for me. But I do enjoy standing much more. Being able to bend your knees and kind of take some of those shots really helps.
I watched 1967. I drove down for the Atlantic City race, and it was Odell and Dale Thayer in a twin-engine outboard, and the waves were just it was off Steel City Pier, and the waves were just at the point where Odell could take off from this wave and land on the face of this one.
Right.
I mean, he had just had it absolutely perfect,
I've only had that happen a couple of times. One, my favorite moment in my offshore career, it was 2010 Point Pleasant, and we had just a dead east wind, not north or south, just dead east. And turn one was fun. It was lumpy in there. And we were coming down to the last lap. It was us, and at the time it was Cotner Trailers, now known as Smith Brothers, and they were running a 496 bone stock Mercury package. So something you'd find in a sea ray. And I always counted them out in the rough because, like, without the torque, it's hard to get up and over. But the advantage that they had is they could just sit on it. Whereas us with all the horsepower, you'd get yourself in trouble. You'd get lofted out a little too far, right?
Yeah.
So they got me. I mean, they were 2-3 lengths ahead of me coming into the last lap. So we just crossed the start-finish line coming into turn 1. And at the time, I'm 16 years old. My brother's screaming at me in the helmet, stay wide, stay wide. And I'm like, why? Every time we go wide, we just get our ass kicked. I mean, we're just getting pounded trying to stay wide. It's rough. Just stay out here, stay out here. As we got there, the whole race, we were pulling an outside-inside move, right? Outside, trying to see if they'd hit one, and I was going to try to capitalize down the inside, and it never worked. They'd get to the buoy, pull, make the turn, and block me on the way in, and whatever. It is what it is. End of the race. I'm getting wider. Now they start to chase because in their head, they don't want me to be able to set up an angle. So they come all the way out and clamp me out there, right? As we got there, my brother just yanked it and just went under him, right? And as we got there, now we have to accelerate because now we yanked and turned, whereas they're just making their turn. So we got all to do to accelerate back up to where we can get up on top and make that turn. And we hit one, man. And it was as high as I've ever been in a boat. In anything is in that little 24 Carrera. We were so far up there that the turn boat was a Silverton with a fly bridge. I lost it. I couldn't see it anymore. And as now dead silence, you know that feeling. The motor's just about stalling, right? And just waiting to come down. And it just went and it went off the next one. And now I'm thinking, whoa, like now we accelerated off the next one, right? But my brother's a madman. We land that one. Perfect. And I'm like, wow, we went up again. And I heard the navigator. His name was Ryan Grauer. If he watches this, I love you, buddy. I heard him screaming for his life off the third one. Enough! Whoa, way too high up there in a little tiny boat, Came down and we made that turn. We were so discombobulated from that whole thing. We were a mile away from the race course. We had missed the next turn buoy. We didn't even make the backstretch. We were behind the spectator fleet, and I have this fantastic picture. I'll put in the feed for you guys so you could see it. We're coming to the start finish line. I missed and went way behind the start. Now, once you're out there, I couldn't come back through the spectator fleet, so I just ran down the backside of them. Coming to that turn, make the turn wide around the spectator fleet again, and it ends right before that turn exits to come up the beach. And I came around there, and we came to the start-finish line. Cotner Trailers hit a wave, stood it up on the transom, and the bow eye scratched the back of my boat as we came through the start-finish trap. That, to this day, I had, I'm sure you guys can look back at a moment. To me, nothing will ever trump that. For 16 years old to hit a set of waves perfect, pull that off at the end, and I was never able to win in my hometown. Ever. Just for whatever reason, it's like you get a gremlin. It comes with you from home. It's like you can't pull it off when you want to, and I did it. And that is like what you said there about just making them perfect. Yeah. I couldn't believe it, man. That's why to this day, Alex that built the Carreras, I still talk to him because that hull, that 24/7, it's not anything spectacular, but when you get it out in the rough, I would love to run some of his bigger stuff. Or I don't know if you guys had any experience running against Carreras or if that was...
They were mainly in the production boats back then.
Okay. But I'd love to run a bigger one because I know how that little one ran, man. That one lights me up. I miss that boat.
I ran a 40-footer out in California, and I ran against this twin-engine Chiata ski boat.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
And I had my wife in the boat with me. And we were running neck and neck. The whole race were just like this. It's pretty smooth. And we come into a turn, and I'm going to out-turn them with a 40-footer against this maybe 26-foot Chiata. That's a ski boat. It's going to turn like this. Well, I come into this turn. I chopped the throttles. When the bow hit, I cranked that wheel around and poured it on.
Right.
And that boat went, wow, and came back. Well, I've told the story to my son a dozen times. So we're in Point Pleasant here. We come into the north turn, and I'm watching him, and he's waiting for me. And we come into a turn. There's a boat here, and he's coming in this way. He chopped those throttles, or he turned that wheel. I chopped the throttles. And I look down at this little canopy boat, and he's right under me. And we're up like this. They're looking that way, figuring we're going to go around them this way, and I'm inside. What a fabulous job he did turn that boat,
Yeah.
but scared the living hell out of me.
I was hoping your boy was going to come with you for this, because that was, when you guys came back, that was so special to us, to see you guys come back and dominate Class 4 the way you did there.
Well, I would never have come back with him. He always wanted to race. I wouldn't let him race because he always said, I'm going to break your records. I said, you're not going to break my records and live. I said, I'm not going to take a chance. I mean, I raced with my daughter for 2 years, and we won. So finally, after the boat sat for, I don't know, 5 years or something, I decided, all right, I'll let you run, but I'm running with you. That way you can't get into trouble. So Carl and my son, we put the boat together, and we ran for the 2 years. And
Yeah. And the guys you ran against there in the Pearl, Jeff and Andy, they actually bought my Carrera. And
did they?
And they run it now. It's called Money Monster.
He's a hell of a guy.
Jeff,
Good name.
Yeah, Jeff's a man. I love it. I love it. And you know what's cool is I'm heartbroken over selling that boat. And I was telling Charlie before we came in on the podcast that I'll never sell another race boat. I can't handle the heartbreak of seeing it go. Well, I can't be any happier with the guys I sold it to. They're just awesome guys. They're true offshore guys. They're the real deal, and they're doing a great job with it. But they're in a class, actually, it's right there on the screen. They're in a class where they're a bit outmatched. It's a 22, true 22. They call it a 24, and they're trying to hang with some of the bigger teams, and it's a hard boat to get your hands on, in that realm.
Any race boat that I ever sold, there was nothing left of it. Except the one, the 35.
Well, if you ask Jeff, he'll tell you there was nothing left of that green thing when I gave it to him. You know what it was, which was kind of crazy, and I didn't see this coming. I ran Class 6 from 2009 to 2014, and we did well. I mean, we never got a Worlds, but I won the national championship 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And most of the reason for that is because being involved with the organization, I wasn't allowed to miss a race. It wasn't an option. I was there every race. And when you're looking for national points, that's step one, So I already had a leg up, And we did our thing in Class 6 for a while, and then we decided to kind of challenge ourselves and go up to Class 5. Now, the difference there is Class 6 is 26 foot and under, 70 miles an hour. Class 5 is 30 foot and under, 75. So in my head, I'm only going 5 more miles an hour. But what I didn't factor was when you get to the rough, I'm running against 30-foot boats. So not just the competitive aspect of that, but they can hold that number. Whereas Class 6, being 26-foot boats, they might get to 70, but they can't maintain it. Mm-hmm. Whereas like these 30-footers can maintain it in 4 to 6s, whereas mine couldn't. But competitive drive, I had to do it. So what, you okay? So I had to. I mean, I didn't have a choice. It was burned into my brain, to compete. I wasn't out there to showboat or ride around. So I walked into Class 5 at a very particular moment in time where John Cohen Jr. was running a superboat at the time called Cisco with Eddie Simmons, who ran for years in Factory 1. And they knew that boat inside and out. Eddie had tons of experience running it in Factory 1. John obviously grew up in it as his father builds superboat. And so there was a big rivalry there that first year. Senior Cohen, he didn't like me fooling around with his superboats with this little Carrera. He didn't like that. So he wanted to see his boy go out and get me. And I wanted more than anything to go get him. But I didn't want to do it in St. Clair in a river. I wanted to do it in the big stuff. And that was, to me, where I would hang my badge. And so we spent an entire year, whereas at the time we were running the Fountain in the Super V class, and we had a lot of things going on. All attention got directed to that little green thing to try to go beat them. And it culminated into one of my favorite series of races. I love rivalry. I love that. I love I can do that friendly with people. Like I enjoy that. I like to compete, and I don't mind if you beat me. It just makes me want to beat you more. And we had a great couple years there, man. One particular time in Atlantic City, John Cohen Jr. can attest to this. It's big. The Coast Guard actually came to us before the race and explained that they can't get the cutters out the inlet. So, and not that that means it was enormous, but those big boats don't handle as good as ours. So
Yeah.
sometimes they just won't try the inlet. So, but it was big. It was, it was 8s. And we were going out, and we're in the mill, and there's a thing that me and my brother always laugh about, where he'd say to me before the race, "How do you feel about this?" And I'd always tell him, "Let's go for it." I don't, there was no quit in my mind. I'm 18 years old at this point. I bounce well, So we go out there, and he says to me, "What do you want to do here?" I said, "I don't know, man. It's big. I mean, we're sitting in the milling circle, and I can't see the pace boats or anything. I mean, we're just falling down in these holes." And so we get the green flag, and actually the parade lap starts from there, and we're running it. I couldn't get that boat. It was like it was my first time in the boat. I couldn't get it to run right. I mean, we're just falling off of stuff, and it's just not good for me today. And so the pace boat gets up after the parade lap, gets the yellow flag up. We're all pacing, and green flag goes up. And I don't know what my brother did, what he found in the trim of this boat, but it lit up. I mean, it was on fire. We were just clipping the tops of stuff. We never fell in one. And Cohen was doing the same. And we got through turn 1 and 2, right into the wall, coming down the backstretch now. Cohen's got me by 5-6 boat lengths. And I can see him turning and looking. He's got his eye on me, and I know he knows I'm there. So I'm saying to my brother, like, let's figure out a way around him. He knows we're here, right? So I kind of pushed inside him and kind of hid in his wake for a little while. And he'll tell you he thought I broke a drive or something. He didn't know I was there. I was sneaking around his transom, got outside him, and got ahead of him. And now his eyes went this big. How is that little thing in front of me out here? Well, found out really quick. We hit one, and we were in the air for so long that by the time we came down, he was 5-6 boat lengths ahead of us. And so we get to the turn, and we're chewing on his transom again. And as we're coming into that, all in one straightaway, I got back to him, and as we were getting to the turn, he turned around to look and make sure I was gone, and I was right there. And I could see at this point, I'm from me to you away from his boat, and we're in big water. And we kind of went up, and my boat took one this way, and his took one this way. And as they landed, they kind of just folded in together on the rub rails, and he decided right then and there, no more playing around with this little thing. He lit it up and got out of there. Like, I love it, man. That's why, like, when you guys talk about your day, when you guys talk about running the cigarettes, the bananas, and being out there in that heat of competition where you really have 5 or 6 barnstormers at every event, I long for that. That is where I had the most fun in my career, was when it was rough and when the competition was real. And, like, I think it's so cool that you guys came in today, because people now listening to these podcasts that I do with the racers today don't understand where that comes from. Like, I'm not some brand new idea. I'm a product of my environment.
You've missed out on all the fun that we had.
I know.
In production class, which wasn't as organized as the open class, if you were one of the lead boats, you could take the fleet with you. So now there's no land here. So you go like this, and then you go like this, and then you go like this. Then pretty soon you slow down and you open the hatches. And you've already led all of the fleet, and they keep going that way. And as they go, you put the hatch down, and you go back onto the right course.
So
Did that a couple of times.
Yeah.
there is, and so there's a long-standing thing within the organization now that Bill Gazelle was known for that, was known for, his tricks of the trade. And so, like, is that true? Like, a lot of that went on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're the rabbit and you're out in the lead and everybody's following you. They're not paying attention to the compass. They're watching you.
Right.
All of a sudden, you stop, open the hatches. They go blowing by you, and now you turn around and go back.
I was lucky enough to be invited on the 2010 the Around Long Island race.
Right.
In a 1987 30-foot Sonic with small blocks and alpha drives. Okay?
Which was that Sonic, that's your hull and deck,
Well,
right?
it used to be. Not that 31, but my 38 became a Coyote. After that, it was sold to Sonic. The molds were sold to Sonic. And he had it on a swim platform and became a 42.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
But at the same time, the original design I had, let's block it and we can make 34s out of this,
Right.
which Sonic also did.
Right.
So, but that 30 was a different. It was like he was saying the stern wasn't really a V; it was more rounded.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm walking down the dock and my cell phone rings and pick it up. He's getting ready to go on the boat, and it's Bobby Sicente, and he says, "Remember what we used to do to the new guys showing up at open class? We'd go up to a new guy and say, 'Listen, Bill, it's not public because it's not really legal, but the first guy that gets the first checkpoint, we all kick in $1,000 for him,' with the idea that he's going to blow up before the rest of us. Because here's when the boat's the heaviest with all the fuel and stuff like that, you know.
Maximum load.
So then I said, well, there's, you know, like 3 or 4 outer limits here and a couple of other. I said, I'll go and tell him that. Then when I call him back later, he goes, how'd you do? I said, we won. Yeah.
Who was the one that bought the boat from me, the 35? Guy in Miami, big, heavy guy.
Oh, I know who you mean. Clauser. Paul
Clauser.
Clauser.
We fly over to Italy, and he's got these race motors in there. They're low block, big bore, and they made horsepower. And we're at the start of the race. The flag goes down, and we're running flat out, trimmed out, right out there. Lead. There's a little ripple. I pull the throttles back. Boom! Nothing. Blew both engines right there.
Oh my goodness.
Burned the pistons. They had such compression in the damn motors that as soon as I pulled back and hit them again,
It was enough.
nothing.
Four.
I looked over at Clauser. I said, "Told you the motors wouldn't work."
Well, that's the old. You see the Ford versus Ferrari movie that came out.
Yeah.
They went with the same thought process. If we can jack up the compression, just keep it under, what was it, 6,000 RPM was the magic number, and then in the last couple miles you can light it up.
Yeah.
Compression doesn't win a race.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. And I had learned that lesson. That motor I told you about was 13-1, and my main thing was I was tired of trying to find race fuel. That's not as easy to do today.
No, we tried to do that down in Buenos Aires.
Right.
$15 a gallon.
I was
for
tired of that.
regular avgas.
Yeah. And so I was tired of that, and also you start to realize in what we do today, torque is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
We I always wanted to build a big bore and long stroke motor.
Right.
And when we finally got the blocks, I built those 610s that we had.
Yeah.
In fact, we ran them down in Maryland against that boat with the blower motors in it. The guy wouldn't give me the right time of day when I went to say hello to him. So when we got to the water, he's a little bit ahead of me, and he's a class ahead of me. So I seen red. I'm going to pass this boat. No,
The cigarette?
I think it was a cigarette.
All white?
No, it was blue bale. It was a began with a B, I think. It was a 36 or 38 footer. So I'm seeing red, and I'm trimming out and laying it to it. And Carl is telling me to slow down. Now, this is bracket racing. I think I'm allowed 85.
Yep.
Oh, I'm over 92.
Yeah.
And I don't know if your father let me go or if he just didn't catch me.
Those telemetry units that we used to run back then are really like fossilized now, but they used to record your speed every 3 seconds. So every speed number that we had came from a 3-second average, and you were allowed to be over your speed for 3 of those recordings, which ultimately translated into 9 seconds. So you might have just barely gotten back under the speed in time.
Anyway, I passed him and
Right.
didn't realize what I was doing.
Was it Cancun Cantina? Was that it? I'm trying to think of the big charger boats back then.
He had 671s in or 871s.
71. So it might have been Team Extreme, Cancun Cantina?
No, it wasn't that. I thought it began with a B.
It's not. I can't think of it right now in my head. Would have been Class 3, right? Because you were in Class 4.
I thought it might have been even higher than that.
Well, they should have known better than to mess with you in the rough.
It was funny that the kid, he's all for it, but Carl's telling me, slow down, slow down.
Well, you know what's cool is the thought process of the kids today that are getting involved in boat racing. They look back and they say, well, you know, the guys from back then, they didn't have to jockey for position, and it was more about navigation and longevity. But then you run into you, where you come back there 2006, 7, something like that, and you win the Geico Triple Crown that we put on in Class 4, which at the time was one of our heaviest classes. And it made me feel so good to just put it in everybody's face. Like, you think they can't run? Yeah.
Yeah, we won it twice.
Yeah. Yep. And that was at your first year. You raced Augie, didn't you? In the 38 in the Scarab?
I think so.
Yeah. And then the second year was your battle with the Pearl?
Yeah, and then I was always fighting with, what's his name from the guy came with the two boats, one on top of one another.
Jim Simmons.
Simmons. Him
Yep.
and me were duking it out all the time.
Yep. That's the craziest setup. You ever see Jim Simmons?
He
and
was
stuff?
running nitrous, too.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And the funny thing is that people don't believe you when you say that because you don't hear of boats with nitrous. But I could tell you the God's honest truth. Back in 2002, we were at the World Championships, and Tyler Crockett was there with a 30-foot Phantom called Fortress. And he had a nitrous purge put in the boat, and we were running the old Viper against him. Coming down to the last lap, there was 2 different ways to enter that race. You could sign up with John Carbonell as SBI, or you could sign up as APBA. They were 2 separate clubs competing at the same event with boats in the same classes, which was, looking back, kind of goofy because, like, you could take third but win because you were registered into APBA. It was kind of weird, but so they were coming down to the start finish line and they had Fortress covered. I mean, they were 8-9 lengths ahead of them, and Fortress hadn't been able to make up that ground the whole race. Well, Tyler hit that little red button, and that thing got out off its tail and ran my old man down like he had no business being in the same race. I was like, wow, and then we found out it was nitrous. I'm like, that stuff works, huh?
Yeah, right.
In the cars, obviously, but I never thought in a boat that it would. I thought if you ever used nitrous in a boat, unless you used it very smartly, like just kind of introduced it to the fuel a little bit and kind of brought it on slow, I thought you'd just grenade your stuff because, like, nitrous isn't good for load.
No, it didn't grenade that. It would grenade the drive.
Yeah, that too. But, like, I always thought, like, when you put that in a car, you got to change a lot of things, timing and, when you put it in a boat, I always thought the amount of load that the boats are under, if you hit that nitrous button, it would just grenade the motor. I mean, the motor's at full load, and then you shoot nitrous down the intake. Yeah. What's going to happen?
Well, he did do something. He did do something down there in Maryland because he pulled the heads that night.
Right. Yep. Mm. Yeah, there was a lot of that in that day.
We caught on to it because we were offered to help him.
There was all kinds of tricks.
He didn't want us helping.
Don't look under here.
He brought the tube in from behind the intake.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what I saw too, guys are doing now is they're doing it in the distributors. They're making their own distributors with their own caps and putting all the plumbing through the distributor, and it's pretty wild the stuff people are coming up with. Wow. But there's some crazy stuff, man. Like I was talking to Will Smith, who builds Phantom powerboats, and he was telling me a story about a guy that ran just an open nitrous system that filled the bilge full of nitrous and pulled it in through the intake because the rules didn't say anything about that. I'm like, man, that's crazy. I mean, that's a powder keg. Yeah. One little spark back there, but people have done some crazy stuff to get an advantage.
Yeah, what if you set it off as a CO2 system and regulated it?
Well, that's basically what they did. But you're still filling the bilge with nitrous. I mean, a bolt comes loose and clicks off a motor mount, and you're a time bomb, man.
It blows and it blows.
Yeah, man, but pretty crazy stuff. The stuff that we'll do for
no, you just have to replace the hatches.
That's it.
Maybe the top of the motor.
But what time you got there?
It is 3:30.
3:30? You got anything else you want to go through, Charlie?
Just if anyone wants to order books, they can look on Horba. This one, unfortunately, is not available anymore, but this one is. And Sea Race. I don't know if anyone is lacking a Sea Race copy, but I purchased all of John Krause's estate. So I have all those photographs. I have all Sal Magiri's photographs, all Ron Thibodeau's photographs, the original paintings by George Bartel.
You got the picture of the helicopter that I shot the water through?
Is that the America's Cup?
One of them, yeah. whirly bird. He come
believe
right
he
down
does.
nice and low, and I shot the water right through it. They thought they were in the drink.
I believe you do. You do have that photo. Right?
Yeah.
There was another one where the plane, Salmageri, came over my deck, and I hit his wheels.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
that? Can you
I
put?
can't pull it up right now, but I
Okay.
will include it when I.
Yeah. All
edit.
right. Put it in there.
Absolutely.
I can see that.
So
Plane's
where
always
can
got in the way.
That's right.
where
Horrible.
where can people listening go to buy your books?
Historic Race Boats, .com,
Okay.
or just put in my name and Horba in Google, and it'll give you the link for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this book is done, Blue Water Warriors, but I'm working on the 50s to the 69,
The Innovators.
the innovators.
I'm excited for that.
Okay.
We'll definitely have to order one for the desk here. Well, guys, I just want to thank you for coming in. Billy, thank you, sir. Charlie, thank you. And nobody knows this, but Ernie Dupree's sitting over there. He's no chump either. You might know him from his heroic performance in 2017 in that boxer suit, Finn. 16? Go back and watch that live stream if you want to see that madman dominate Class 5. Guys, thank you. I
Thank
hope you enjoyed Offshore Live number 12. See you
Thank
guys.
Keep it going. You're doing a good job.
I'm trying. Thank you.
Yeah.